you, or do you just shut your eyes and then consume it? And now ask yourself if you ate every one of Biden's lies under guise of harm reduction and the promise of a slight improvement. And now imagine long ago that Biden chose to show you who he really was by traumatizing you for his amusement. Now imagine that you watched him touch a Bible with those filthy hands, and then assume the power of the highest seat in all the land, of knowing your attacker wields a global coalition born of three-letter agencies who'll make a life's mission out of trying to discredit you through lies, damn lies, and collusion. Big tech is never gonna separate from our surveillance state. Fuck's sakes, they're just a breath away from total fusion. So there will come a time where even if you see the light, your voice will never reach the sky through all the bots and all the noise pollution. So trust us when we tell you that the masking of abuses is perhaps this country's oldest institution. And I know nothing nobler than facing it in honor of the truth when you know that the people holding power have been neutralizing truth since there was wet ink on the Constitution. So know that Tara's truth is something crucial to the movement. And if you see yourself a partner to the revolution, help this country see through all the baseless propaganda through the crux of Joe's illusions. And recognize that Tara Reid gave everything she had so she could tell us what the truth is. Recognize the decent thing to do when someone bears their soul and shows their bruises is not to ask for context or offer up your own solutions. Your job is just to listen with an honest mind and put yourself on Tara's side a moment so you understand the path she chooses. That there is no instant fame worth the dragging of your name. And if that's what you think, you've a lot to learn about the kind of facts the mob can handle and the kind that it refuses. You've a lot to learn about the news and all its many uses. Guess you've yet to learn the truth the news will serve as fruit from which they've squeezed out all the juices. And we all eat the husk and just pretend it's full of nutrients and isn't really useless. But the jaws of our ability to yield accountability are absolutely toothless. So don't you kid yourself that any lips are being loosened. They won't ever tell us where the bodies are or show us where the proof is. It's on you to recognize the lechery our president so regularly oozes. It's on you to muster up some honesty and ask yourself how Biden won your trust, but it's America that loses. Open up your eyes and learn to recognize the bruises. Open up your eyes and learn to recognize the bruises. Lips, brand new taxes, starving all the billionaires and neutering their Visa Maxes. Topple Congress off their axis, mobilize the homeless, give them axes, call it praxis. Chop a couple limbs off the legislative branches. We'll show you the difference between air as a human right and guaranteed oxygen access. Octogenarians who barely know what day it is are culling countless citizens while sitting on a dais made of ignorance that was built on the graves of the slaves made to labor for its self-declared significance. And all to build a Congress full of millionaires who make their fortunes insider trading while they shit on all the indigent. So I got a bone to pick with our leaders, and I'll start with the ligaments. Pick right through the muscle, dig the marrow out, and serve it to the unhoused millions living in their minivans or watching their belongings get evicted from their tenement. I have a dream where we breach the walls of Congress and just let them in. And what happens next will survive in only text, cause there won't be any evidence. There will only be that heavy kind of feeling that pervades a space where there has been a reckoning and you can feel its remnants. Let any man who enters seeking power know that those who came before him suffocated on their eminence. That there once was a seal on the wall, but we quartered it and scattered all the pieces that it might prevent its semblance. And so we end the great experiment. We'll take all your billions, leave you 2 coins for the ferryman. Leave you drifting on a Dutchman, floating derelict among the wretched seraphim. For holy is the hand that wiped the land clean of those who pose as gentlemen. That's my time, honey. Cue the thunderclap and strike the theremin. And so we end the great experiment. Give you 2 coins for the ferryman. I think I liked it better being blind, when I couldn't read between the lines, and when I couldn't see the cracks in the structure that lay bare before me the whole time. I think I liked it better back when I suspended disbelief and swallowed pride. I thought I knew the difference in the red from the blue, but they both bleed us so dry. They both bleed us so dry. My favorite songs don't hit the same way. I get to the end of a 4-minute track and I'm only looking back thinking, what did they actually say? So I try to sit down with my wife and watch TV, but I just see propaganda elevating the police in the simplest of sitcom banter, and tiny little altars full of offerings to corporate masters in every well-planned wide pan shot of the name brand stocking up the pantry. Pull back one long tracking shot out to the garage to the logo on the Camry. Nice tight shot of the Camry. Close-up view of the Camry, slow pan up on the Camry, long slow zoom to the unmoving human who's up in the front with the tube pumping fumes to him straight from the back of the Camry. Ashamed he just could not provide for himself, let alone for his family. It's a blue pill mindset that spent 2020 making dance beats. I think I liked it better being blind, when I couldn't read between the lines, and when I couldn't see the cracks in the structure that lay bare before me the whole time. I think I liked it better back when I suspended disbelief and swallowed pride, and thought I knew the difference in the red from the blue, but they both bleed us so dry. They both bleed us so dry. Ignorance is bliss, which explains why a lot of us are so fucking happy. Quick to take the trip for all its trappings. Never one to ask what's up, what's going on, or God forbid what's happening. A lot of us would strap into the ride and then spit right in the eye of the guy whose job it is to snap your fastenings. But maybe we're all born with that capacity. Maybe each of us comes standard with humor, compassion, malice, and audacity. This is how it has to be. Some of us can.
Who are these people?
And it'll go to the 3-shot whenever it figures out to catch up. What's up, everybody? How's everyone doing tonight? Welcome to another episode of INN News. I'm here with my co-host Collin, who, you know, is always here, which is lovely. Wasn't here last week, though, but he did pre-record stuff. So if people didn't see that, they should go check out the last episode. Also with us tonight, friend of the show, DJ Joe Nice. How are you, sir?
Awesome. How you guys doing? Everything good?
Yeah, man. Doing great. Other than the world is burning, you know, we're doing fine, you know?
Yeah, you're damn right. Burning, a lot going on.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember if there's anything I need to plug specifically. Not that I can think of. Indy had his show today with Robert Durden. That was good. People should go check that out as well. You know, Mondays, Tara, people should go check out last Monday and Tuesday. We had shows both those nights. So people should go check that out. But anyway, Collin, you have stories for us this evening, right?
I sure do.
Cool. I'm ready whenever you are, friend.
Okay. So I kind of hinted at this. I think I mentioned this for the last couple of weeks. But for those of you who don't know, I am part of a teacher advocacy group in DC, where I live. And we had our annual benefit this past week. And Congressman Jamaal Bowman spoke very briefly, gave a short address. Now, for those of you who want to know, did I have the opportunity to ask him anything outside of his speech? The answer is no. He came in, did the speech, and left. So he was only there for 20 minutes. But I did manage to record his speech. So I actually want to dissect this into probably what will be a two-parter. So I want to talk about an aspect of his speech that I'll mention this week, and I'll save the other half for next week's show. But I do want to play it, and actually, DJ Joe Nice, I'm actually very glad you're here for this segment because, you know, just talking to you in the past, you definitely have an ear for this and an understanding of this, probably in a lot more ways than I do. So I definitely would love to hear your take as far as what Joe Bowman says and how I'm going to redirect it into something that I wish he would have talked more about, but I'm going to be very gracious to him given time, maybe, or I just think more likely it's stuff that he will not say, given the party that he's a part of is kind of complicit in this. So it's a 10-minute clip, the video. So I want to play it all the way through.
Cool.
I'll stop at the end and see if you have any comments, and then I'll kind of go into the actual rant that I have for this week.
Gotcha. Why is it muted?
The volume's off. That's
Thank you so much for the invite. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for that warm introduction. Congratulations to all the honorees. Where are the honorees? Raise your hand if you're an honoree. Please give them a round of applause. Congratulations. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your work. Thank you for your love of the work. Because you cannot be an honoree unless you have love, true, deep, real love for the work that you are doing, for the kids that you are serving, for the families that you are serving, and for the communities you are serving. When teachers talk about love, and when activists in education talk about love, it's not a cliche for us. When people ask us why we're doing this, how is the work going, and they ask questions like that, the core answer is love. When I worked in education for 20 years, I was a teacher, I was a school counselor, I was a middle school principal, I did it for 20 years. I went to work every day. When you're sick, you push through, you do what you got to do, and you do it because you love the work that you do. But you also realize how important that work is to not just transforming the lives of the kids and families that you serve, but transforming the nation into what it is meant to be and what it claims it wants to be. That work, that real work lives in our schools each and every day and lives in our classrooms as a sacred space. So I would not be here in Congress if it wasn't for my time as a teacher. I would not be here in Congress if it wasn't for my time as a school counselor. I don't even know if you know I was a school counselor. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for my time as a middle school principal, because when you're in those spaces, all of the issues of society intersect at your doorstep every day, intersect in your classroom every day. When a child is struggling to learn a particular topic or content or reading or whatever it is, you know that that is connected to something in their family, community, society, etc. It's also connected to historical discrimination. And we have to be honest and tell that real story. There's a reason why we have an achievement gap that's rooted more in economics than it is in race. We got to talk about the economic issues there and the strategic political decision making that's led to certain communities remaining in poverty while others have not. And we have to talk about how poverty creates complex traumas that lead to some of the learning challenges that our kids face. And unfortunately, not enough educators even know about this.
Come on.
So when we talk about the school to prison pipeline and not implementing restorative justice, is because we quick to put black and brown kids into special ed before really trying to find out what's going on. So all of that experience, all of that knowledge, if you will, led me to open a school, led me to pursue a doctorate, and led me to run for Congress against a 31-year institution, and I won. I didn't win because of me. I won because of the coalition we had, but because of my training as an educator. So, and an education activist, by the way. So it wasn't about just doing the work in classrooms and in schools. It was about being an activist in the community on the ground. And that's what you all are. So I need for you to continue to be activists, because in order to save our democracy, we need educators at the front of the line. And we need educator activists at the front of the line, speaking truth to power. We need you at the local level, at the state level. Sorry, I know DC don't have a state. My bad. We worked on it. I'm an original co-sponsor. We're trying to get it done. But again, isn't that crazy? Like, what? That's crazy. But also, if you don't have consistent engagement and relationships with your member of Congress and the senators, you have to consistently engage them. Because yes, fight locally, but please, you gotta engage Congress. Because Congress has a lot of power to do a lot of things. And in order for, I'll say it this way, I was sworn into office January 3rd. January 6th, there was an insurrection. It was an attack on our nation's capital, the first attack on the capital since the War of 1812. It was done by white nationalists. We just had a horrific massacre in Buffalo, New York, facilitated by someone who's following something called the Great Replacement Theory. He literally researched the closest black community, drove 200 miles to slaughter black people. This is what he did. Tens of millions are being radicalized every day online because they think Trump is the official president and they think the Great Replacement Theory is real. So we may see more of what happened in Buffalo across the country, and we see mass shootings every day. And speaking just briefly about the great replacement theory, how many of you know about eugenics? Raise your hand if you know about eugenics. Many of you do. And as we know, when slavery ended in this country, it ended in terms of chattel slavery. There are other forms of oppression and slavery that persisted in our society. Jim Crow is one. Eugenics is another. The systemic degradation of the black race via sterilization, but also via standardized testing and how they're designed. There's a direct line from the eugenics movement, sterilization, the creation of standardized tests, and what they've been used for.
Yes.
And it connects directly today to the great replacement theory. The bottom line is the white race is king, everybody else, get out of here. So our fight, and if you don't believe our fight is rooted in that, who was our previous president? How did it get there? And ask yourself this question: if it weren't for COVID, what if we didn't have COVID? Would he be president again? Ask yourself, think about that. So, sorry to, tell you all of that, but if we're not honest about who we are, we will never achieve the vision and the ideals of our democracy. We have to be honest with who we are, we have to be honest with how we got here, and then we can create a new vision for where we need to go. And I think that vision includes all of us, a multiracial, multi-ethnic, multi-economic, multi-religious, multi-gender democracy where everyone can thrive. But we need leaders, and we need help. So there were, and I'll close on this, and sorry for speaking so long. Throughout American history, we've had the abolitionist movement, the suffrage movement, the LGBTQ movement, many movements throughout history, civil rights movement, and it was those movements that made transformative change. We need another movement right now, and we need people in the streets and on the phones and writing letters and on social and on email and a part of this movement, not for a season, but at least for a decade, and I say for the rest of our lives, because democracy is a contact sport, and if we don't engage and keep it, we will lose it. And we are close to losing it right now. So I need you, we need you, our children need you, and you know it. So I need a national teachers movement, I need a national children's movement, and I need a national parents movement to lead this human rights movement that I think we need right now. So it's up to y'all to start that movement. So after you have fun tonight, let's get started. And I'm here to support you in any way I can. God bless you. I love you. Have a good evening.
Oh, thoughts, boys and girls.
Where do we begin? Oh my goodness. Jeez. Mike. What?
Oh.
Collin, you're a better man than me for sitting through 9.5 minutes of that. I swear. I mean, we're gonna pick this apart like Thanksgiving turkey. Seriously.
Please do.
Oh my Lord. I mean, the one when I went like about 6.5, 7 minutes in, when he says Congress has the power to do a lot of things. Yeah, it's words, not mine. Okay, Collin, you remember where you and I and about 35 of us were on January 4th and January 3rd of 2021. We were walking around the same Capitol building that was the place of an insurrection 48 hours later, when we were marching for the Force the Vote rallies that Jackson Hinkle was able to organize. And We were hoping to have the progressive members of the House of Representatives force the vote and withhold their votes for Nancy Pelosi until a floor vote for Medicare for all gets presented on the floor of the House of Representatives. Again, he says Congress has the power to do a lot of things. Where, again, he's a congressperson. Why didn't he force the vote? Why didn't he do it?
Nancy's Mama Bear. Like, you can't anger Mama Bear. Like, God forbid we get anything we could actually use to like better ourselves for the country.
Where is that? And speaking of which, I through the power of cellular phone technology, I decided to look up some of the legislation that Jamaal Bowman at least presented in the House of Representatives. Let's take a look at House Resolution 5779, which was introduced on August 6, 2021. And I'm going to read it to you verbatim. It says here, supporting the designation of August 11, 2021 as Hip Hop Celebration Day, supporting the designation of August 21 as Hip Hop Recognition Month, and supporting the designation of November 2021 as Hip Hop History Month. He said, we need leaders. Does this look like leadership to you? Yeah. I don't give a damn about Hip Hop History Month or Hip Hop Celebration Day when gas prices are $5 a gallon. And people are getting kicked out of their homes because they can't afford rent. And student loans are about to be reactivated in about a month and a half or 2 months. But again, he says, we need leaders, and this is the type of leadership we're getting. Again, this is Jamaal Bowman. This is Jamaal Bowman. This is your guy. This is your guy, New York. This is your guy, New York. He talked about saving democracy as having educators on the front of the line. And I understand where he comes from when he says that. But more importantly, we need a new education. And we need to get rid of critical replacement theory and go back to critical race theory. That is the education that we need. Because how are we going to tell the truth about this failed social experiment that is the United States of America if we don't tell the entire story that is America? If we don't tell the entire story. So again, it's more than just having educators on the line. It is the subject matter and the pedagogy that must be changed in order to tell the true story of America, so we understand how this democracy was formed, so then we can go ahead and change the way this democracy operates. But Jamaal Bowman, being assuming having a doctorate in education, he's more interested in placating the educators rather than providing some constructive criticism to the structure that is the education as we understand it. So, I mean, he talked about January 6th, and radicalization in Trump, and talking about how did President Trump get there? And if not for COVID, President Trump would have been reelected. I thoroughly agree with that. And if President Trump had actually done something for the people, other than, hell, if President Trump had put on a mask, he's getting reelected. Let's not kid ourselves with this. Let's not kid ourselves with this. And Collin, you know this more than just about anybody. I was screaming at the top of my lungs 2 years ago that we didn't want Joe Biden as president. Screaming at the top of my lungs. There were a whole lot of people in Liberalville saying, oh, well, Trump, we got to get rid of Trump. Biden's better than Trump. We got to get rid of Trump. How can anybody with a straight face say that Biden is better than Trump when Biden is the reason for many of the adverse social and economic conditions that pervade the United States currently? How can anybody think he was a more viable option?
He's increased police funding, gave multiple $1 billion now to a foreign power that is running out of ammunition. Like
the actual number is $54 billion. $54 billion over the past 4 months to the Ukraine. Not a single dollar to Black people, not a single dollar to deal with healthcare, not a single dollar for school children, not a single dollar for renters relief, not a single dollar to reduce and ultimately eliminate student loan debt. But again, 54 billion American dollars, taxpayer money. No one asked, how are we going to pay for it? Okay, nope. Cut the check. We
just print that money.
We just print the money. But when we are still in the middle of a health crisis and a health emergency, because the current health and the current health legislation, the current health hasn't ended yet. The current health emergency is not ended. We're still under a public health emergency. And this is under the previous president and previous Health and Human Secretary, Alex Azar. We're still under it. And Javier Becerra has renewed that public health declaration a couple of different times. So we're still in a public health emergency. What about the stimulus checks? Where are those? Where are those? Where's the money? Why did we end unemployment? People are still unemployed and underemployed. Where is that money? $54 billion could help a lot of people. $54 billion could help a lot of small businesses. Where is that money? But no, let's go ahead and send it to a foreign power. Let's go ahead and send it to a foreign power.
It's crap. Then this whole stuff you talked about eugenics on top of that, like,
right?
When, how, where, right now,
right.
Like, you know,
right. And actually, that's what I'm going to get into, because he mentioned it but didn't go all the way, and I think there's probably a reason for that. So I found this from Harvard, and you're probably wondering why you get this from Harvard. When I read it, and to be very fair to you all, it's a long article. If you're interested in reading the article, the link's in the description. I just tried to pull apart what would make sense in connection to what Bowman was kind of hinting at, but anyone who may not necessarily know any better may make the assumption, oh, eugenics is a white winger thing. So, but I want to debunk that tonight, because you might be surprised of who kind of led eugenics movement in this country. So this was written in the spring of 2016. You got it? Yeah, I got it. So in August 1912, Harvard President Emeritus Charles William Eliot addressed the Harvard Club of San Francisco on a subject close to his heart: racial purity. Is being threatened, he declared, by immigration. Eliot was not opposed to admitting new Americans, but he saw the mixture of racial groups it could bring about as a grave danger. Each nation should keep its stock pure, Eliot told his San Francisco audience. There should be no blending of races. Eliot's warning signs against mixed races, which for him included white Irish Catholics marrying white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, Jews marrying Gentiles, and Blacks marrying whites, was a central tenet of eugenics. The eugenics movement, which had begun in England and was rapidly spreading in the United States, insisted that human progress depending on promoting reproduction by the best people in the best combinations and preventing the unworthy from having children. The former Harvard president was an outspoken supporter of another major eugenics cause of his time, forced sterilization of people declared to be feeble-minded, physically disabled, criminalistic, or otherwise flawed. In 1907, Indiana had enacted the nation's first eugenic sterilization law. 4 years later, in a paper on the suppression of moral defects, Eliot declared that Indian's law blazed the trail in which all free states must follow if they would protect themselves from moral degeneracy. Harvard's role in the movement was in many ways not surprising. Eugenics attracted considerable amount of support from progressives, reformers, and educated elites as a way of using science to make a better world. Harvard was hardly the only university that was home to prominent eugenicists. Stanford's first president, David Starr Jordan, and Yale's most acclaimed economist, Irving Fisher, were leaders in the movement. So basically all Ivy Leagues, the schools that are highly respected in this country, are the ones who promoted this. I'll continue. The University of Virginia was center of scientific racism, with professors like Robert Benedict Bean offers such works of pseudoscience as the 1906 American Journal of Autonomy article, Some Racial Peculiarities of the Negro Brain. But in part because of its overall prominence and influence on society, and in part because of its sheer enthusiasm, Harvard was more central to American eugenics than any other university. Harvard has, with some justification, been called the brain trust of 20th century eugenics, but the role that it played is little remembered or remarked upon today. It is understandable that the university is not eager to recall part of that tragedy misguided intellectual movement, but it's a chapter too important to be forgotten. Eugenics emerged in England in the late 1800s when Francis Galton, half-cousin of Charles Darwin, began studying the families of some of history's greatest thinkers and concluded that genius was hereditary. Galton invented a new word combining the Greek for good and genes, and launched a movement calling for society to take affirmative steps to promote the more suitable races or strains of blood. Echoing his famous half-cousin's work on evolution, Galton declared that what nature does blindly, slowly, and ruthlessly, man may do providentially, quickly, and kindly. Eugenics soon made its way across the Atlantic, reinforcing by discoveries of Gregor Mendel and the new science of genetics. In the United States, it found some of its early support among the same group that Harvard had, the wealthy old families of Boston. The Boston Brahmins were strong believers in the power of their own bloodlines, and it was an easy leap for many of them to believe that society should work to make the nation's gene pool as exalted as their own. Thoughts so far?
What slide are you on? Because you're not changing it on here for some reason.
Oh.
Yeah.
I'm on
6, 7.
6.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yes, and but yeah, Joe, any thoughts so far?
I think Jamaal Bowman must have known this.
Mm-hmm.
Bowman must have known this. And I think maybe a reason why he did not say anything about this, because again, you mentioned in this article about the Boston Brahmins, there's a bloodline, there's a ruling elite, and I hate using that term, but there is a ruling elite in this country, and most of them come from Ivy League schools, most specifically Harvard. Many of these wealthy donors that probably donated to Jamaal Bowman's campaign are probably Harvard graduates or had connections to Harvard. So he probably didn't mention this in order to make sure that the campaign dollars continue flowing. Mm-hmm. That's probably the major reason why I think he didn't mention this. But
it's ironic that he was like, we need to know our hidden history, which in of itself, this is. So is that ironic that Jamaal mentioned that in his speech and in front of teachers, no less, when I'm sure a lot of teachers in the room may not necessarily have made that connection. I happen to know about this.
Right.
Like I said, if I had the opportunity to talk to Jamaal Bowman, I probably would have mentioned this to him. But the fact that, like, you know, he kind of made the illusion that this was a right-wing thing when it's actually progressives, quote unquote, back in their day, you know, who were essentially the academic elite, who were the ones that promoted this. And actually, in a lot of ways, are the cause of what we have today as far as the racism that we kind of experience now. So this came from academia.
And not only and it's easy to, I guess if you believe that it comes from a book, and if you have somebody that has a PhD after an elite institution that says, oh, this is the way it is, you're probably more likely to believe it instead of doing your own research, which again, when we talk about the Overton window of the United States, and Collin, you bring up a brilliant point. You said that these were the quote unquote progressives that thought of this. If progressives in the late 1800s think this way about eugenics and ultimately Black people, imagine how right-wingers think about Black people. Mm-hmm. Think about that. Think about that. And then it goes, and again, that's when you think about the timing of this study to now, there's really not much difference between what happened then and what's happening now. Because you think about the progressives, or quite honestly, the Democratic Party, they are just as racist as the Republicans. They're just as racist. And in many instances, they're probably worse, because the Republicans are honestly dishonest. The Democrats are dishonestly dishonest. And when you talk about the being a dishonestly dishonest, take a look at this eugenics study. Take a look at how academia is used to promote a racist ideology. I mean, it's mind-boggling, mind-boggling. And I'm disappointed that Jamaal Bowman didn't mention this.
Right. Do you want to turn the slides, Reef, or
I can?
I think I kind of messed up.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
As eugenics grew in popularity, it took hold at the highest levels of Harvard. A. Lawrence Lowell, who served as president from 1909 to 1933, was an active supporter. Lowell, who worked to impose a quota on Jewish students and to keep Black students from living in the yard, was particularly concerned about immigration. and he joined the eugenicists in calling for sharp limits. The need for homogeneity in a democracy, insisted, justified laws for resisting the influx of great numbers of a greatly different race. If Harvard's embrace of eugenics had somehow remained within the university confines as merely an interventional school of thought, the impact might have been contained. But members of the community took their ideas about genetic superiority and biological engineering to Congress, to the courts, and to the public at large with considerable effect. In 1894, a group of alumni met in Boston to found an organization that took a eugenic approach to what they considered the greatest threat to the nation, immigration. Prescott, Farwoods Hall, Charles Warren, and Robert de Courcy Ward were young scions of old New England families, all from the class of 1889. They called the organization the Immigration Restriction League, but genetic thinking was so central to their mission that Paul proposed calling it the Eugenic Immigration League. Joseph Lee, not naming all of that, scion of a wealthy Boston banking family and twice elected a Harvard overseer, was a major funder, and William DeWitt Wright, another future overseer and the president of Bowdoin College, served as a vice president. The membership rolls quickly filled with hundreds of people united in xenophobia, many of them Boston Brahims and Harvard graduates. Their goal, their goal was to keep out groups they regarded as biologically undesirable. Immigration was a race question, pure and simple, Ward said. It is fundamentally a question as to what races shall dominate in the country. League members had made no secret of who they met: Jews, Italians, Asians, and anyone else who did not share their Northern European heritage. So I just want to quickly note, like, especially to, white followers, back in the day, if you weren't British or even French, you were considered an other, so keep that in mind back then, like anything. And I remember, I went to Boston College for undergrad. The reason why Boston College existed was because Irish Catholics were denied admission to Ivy Leagues. So essentially the Jesuits who are ordered Catholic priests who emphasize a lot of education created Boston College out of that need. So just to give you an idea, because I think people do forget that if you were white, not from France or the UK, and even then it was like England, not Ireland, you were considered, like other back then.
Yeah.
Real quick, there's an interesting observation with this, and it says in the second paragraph below, it says designed to keep Jews, Italians, and Asians out. And take a look, and this is around the early 20s,
right?
About 100 years ago. One of my favorite sports is boxing. Boxing. There's a clear correlation to the discrimination of Jews, Italians, Asians, etc., and the prominent boxers of the day.
I mean, classically, the Brown Bomber, right? I mean, couldn't even see his, like, they wouldn't play his video. But they wouldn't play him becoming the heavyweight champion. But yeah. Right.
But what I'm also getting at, many of the great boxers of the 20s, 30s, and 40s were Jews and Italians.
Marciano,
Harry Greb, Jewish, the list goes on. There's many of them. As these populations began to get more educated, they decided that getting punched in the head for a living was not a really good career choice. And that's why, and now you fast forward to 2022. How many Jewish people do you see boxing now?
Not many.
How many Italians can you name that are boxing?
Very few.
If any. How many Black people and Latinos are boxing right now?
Quite a few.
How many Eastern Europeans who aren't of French or British lineage are boxing, other than Tyson Fury?
Yeah, I mean,
and Anthony Joshua.
Right. Like,
so I'm getting at. So this sort of classism based upon nationality it extends. You can see there's a clear lineage between boxing, sports, entertainment, etc.
Yeah.
There's a lot more to discuss, but I know we're kind of short on time. So yeah, let's continue on.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I think this is worth a deep dive, actually, but yeah. I think this is just the beginning of this.
You see the same thing in MMA right now, too. It's all, like Dagestani, like, Irish, like Brazilian. Like, there's very few, like, the class system is there, too. So, but, anyway.
All right. Drawing on Harvard's influence to pursue its goals, recruiting alumni to establish branches in other parts of the country, and boasting President Lowell himself as its vice president, the Immigration Restriction League was remarkably effective in its work. Its first major proposal was a literacy test, not only to reduce the total number of immigrants, but also to lower the percentage from Southern and Eastern Europe, where literacy rates were lower. In 1896, the League persuaded Senator Henry Cabot Lodge of Massachusetts to introduce a literacy bill. Getting it passed and signed into law took time, but beginning in 1917, immigrants were legally required to prove their literacy to be admitted into the country. The League scored a far bigger victory with the passage of the Immigration Act of 1924. After hearing extensive expert testimony about the biological threat posed by immigrants, Congress imposed a harsh national quotas to decide to keep Jews, Italians, and Asians out. As the percentage of immigrants from Northern Europe increased significantly, Jewish immigration fell from 190,000 in 1920 to 7,000 in 1926. Italian immigration fell nearly as sharply, and immigration from Asia was almost completely cut off until 1952.
Jeez.
And you think about Asia, immigration from Asia, many of those people were placed in internment camps.
Right.
You got it?
Not only in the United States, but also in Canada, country I used to live in.
Right.
Yeah. You got it, Collin?
Oh.
Oh,
that came. I think that's okay.
I think they're the same thing.
Yeah, I think it's all right. It's just one clip that I didn't want to use. While one group of alumni focused on inserting eugenics into immigration, another prominent alumnus was taking the lead on the broader movement. Charles Benedict Davenport taught zoology at Harvard before founding the Eugenics Record Office in Cold Spring Harbor, New York in 1910. Funded in large part by Mrs. E.H. Harriman, widow of the railroad magnate, the ERO became a powerful force in promoting eugenics. It was the main gathering place for academics studying eugenics and a driving force in promoting eugenic sterilization laws nationwide. Eugenics followed much the same arc at Harvard as it did in the nation at large. Interest began to wane in the 1930s as the field became more closely associated with the Nazi government that had taken power in Germany. By the end of the decade, Davenport had retired and the ERO had shut down. The Carnegie Institution, of which it was part, no longer wanted to support eugenics research and advocacy. As the nation went to war against a regime that embraced racism, eugenics increasingly became to be regarded as un-American. It did not, however, entirely fade away at the university or nationally. Ernest Houghton, chairman of the anthropology department, was particularly outspoken in support of what he considered a biological purge. In 1936, while the first German concentration camps were opening, he made a major plea for eugenic sterilization, but he emphasized that it should not target any race or religion. The United States also held on to eugenics, if not as enthusiastically as it once did. In 1942, with the war against the Nazis raging, the Supreme Court had a chance to overturn Buck versus Bell and hold eugenic sterilization unconstitutional, but it did not. The court struck down an Oklahoma sterilization law, but on this extremely narrow grounds, leaving the rest of the nation's eugenic sterilization laws intact. Only after the Civil Rights Revolution in the 1960s and changes in popular views towards marginalized groups did eugenic sterilization began to decline more rapidly. But states continued to sterilize the unfit, quote unquote, until 1981.
You know what? That last paragraph, could we go back to that last paragraph, please?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Where it says, but eugenic sterilization began to decline more rapidly, but states continued to sterilize the unfit in 1981. I grew up in Baltimore. Baltimore at one point was the teenage pregnancy capital of the world. Mm-hmm. Teenage pregnancy running rampant in the city. When I was living there as a child, there was a birth control implant called Norplant that was given to young Black girls to avoid teenage pregnancy.
Yeah.
And in many instances, many of the young girls grew up to be women and ended up unable to give childbirth, to bear children as a result of harsh side effects from Norplant. So when this article says that eugenic sterilization begin to decline more rapidly, but states continued to sterilize the unfit until 1981, that's completely false. Because not only did Baltimore go ahead and hand out Norplant birth control devices, and it was a small cylinder that was implanted under the skin, usually under the arm. There are plenty of cities that did this. And let's not forget, we talk about eugenic sterilization. It's not just from a biological perspective, but we can also look at this legislatively. Take a look at how many families were separated as a result of harsh drug policies, mostly almost entirely because of Joe Biden. Take a look at all the bills that he wrote that locked up a generation of Black people. So when you talk about eugenic sterilization, it's not just, at least from my understanding, or at least trying to connect the dots here, it's not just a matter of making sure that we sterilize the unfit. It's also making sure that the unfit, quote unquote, are unable to reproduce by any means necessary. And a great way to do that is to lock up a generation of Black and brown people because of nonviolent drug offenses.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So really, yeah, I think, as I said, this is definitely worth a deep dive. And this is a tweet that I just pulled from Bowman last week. It was a whole thread. And I think I'll definitely want to talk about, the Great Replacement Theory next week. But he says here, today, I'm proud to stand here and lead the introduction of this resolution that condemns the Great Replacement Theory as a white supremacist conspiracy theory that seeks to murder minorities, Jews, Muslims, and immigrants alike. But as you could see, just given kind of a somewhat extensive look at eugenics, again, this is not a white wing talking point. This was developed, like you can argue that a lot of how we view racism, especially now in this century, has been developed by what we deem as what would have been the equivalent of progressives today. These would have been the people who would be considered democratic in their approach to government today. And these were the people that are essentially treating people of color like dogs, like only the fit and only the best pedigrees deserve to live, and the rest of you either do not deserve to be in this country or we're just going to try and kill you off. So sorry, Congressman Bowman, like, you're right to kind of call this out, but I wish you would have went all the way and kind of spoke how, in a lot of ways, your party is complicit in this history as far as knowing all of this. And you didn't say this in front of teachers who I'm not even sure if any of them would know this personally, but if you're going to tell it, you might as well tell the whole hidden history that you failed to mention to us last week.
I agree. And Collin, you bring up an excellent point. You mentioned, quote unquote, his party being the Democratic Party, and a Democratic Party that is just as anti-immigration as the Republicans, Let's not forget the main architect of the bill that created anti-immigration, the main architect of the bill that eventually ended up with all those Black and brown people being locked in cages at the border, all of the Haitians that were whipped by Customs and Border Protection agents months back. The one person that's the main architect of all of this is none other than the current president of the United States, Joseph Robinette Biden Jr. Because let's revisit this as we're talking history. In 1995, Joe Biden wrote and sponsored the Counterterrorism Act of 1995. The bill was never passed in Congress. 6 years later, the Patriot Act got passed. The Patriot Act is an anti-immigration bill. That is what it is. Because let's remember, Joe Biden spent the previous 10 years from 1984 to 1994 locking up brown and black people with various bills. The Comprehensive Asset Forfeiture Act of 1984, Anti-Drug Act of 86, Sentencing Act of 87, Anti-Drug Act of 1988, the Crime Control Act of 1990. And let's remember this: the first crime bill was not written in 1994. It was written in May of 1991. It was the Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act of 1991. Joe Biden wrote and sponsored the bill. It never got passed. 6 months later, he goes ahead and teams up with a segregationist named Strom Thurmond. Remember him, Strom Thurmond. Served 47 or 48 years in South Carolina. In 1948, he was the head of a political party known as the Dixiecrat Party, which was an offshoot of, get ready for this, the Democratic Party. Strom Thurmond was a Democrat. He creates a party that's further to the right than the Republican Party at that time, and it was essentially a segregationist party. The party's logo was the Confederate flag. So a far right-wing political party in 1948 came from the Democratic Party.
Right.
6 months later,
academics of that flag too. The academics are tied into that flag too, because that's University Mississippi brought that crap back.
Exactly.
Right.
That's
and then it became
right.
the state, the state flag after that.
It was the state flag. It's no longer the state flag anymore.
Right. But I'm saying after it was the university first.
Correct.
And then the state picked it up and it was essentially to keep segregating college. That was the desegregating, sorry.
Correct. It was also that the Ole Miss rebels, the rebel was understood to be a Confederate general. You also saw this with other colleges such as Nichols State, which I also think is in Alabama. Nichols State refers to their students as clientele, and it was named after a Confederate war general named, I think, Henry Nichols, who again was a segregationist, slave owner, etc. But getting back to Strom Thurmond created the Dixiecrat Party in 1948, which was an offshoot of the Democratic Party. It wasn't an offshoot of the Republican Party. And then this is the man that Joe Biden went ahead and wrote the second version of the crime bill in November of 1991. 1992, Bill Clinton gets elected. 1993, Joe Biden wrote and sponsored the Senate version of the crime bill, sat with a bunch of senators and a bunch of other police unions to write the crime bill. Omnibus crime bill gets passed in 1994. So again, Joe Biden spent all these years locking up brown and black people, otherwise known as the quote unquote unfit. Let's remember, it was Hillary Clinton that called these black children super predators.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, super predators. That sounds like unfit as far as given everything you just described, Collin. Right. So when we think about the history of eugenics and we link it to the current day political scene that we're in right now, not much has changed. So when Joe Biden went ahead and wrote the Counterterrorism Act of 1995, it became the Patriot Act of 2001, which is an anti-immigration bill. Take a look at all the organizations that were designed to keep anybody who is not white out of the country. Customs and Border Protection, Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, otherwise known as ICE.
Mm-hmm.
Transportation Safety Administration, which will go through your luggage if you so much as had 4 ounces of hummus in your backpack and think you're crazy. So again, eugenics, much like the prison industrial complex, much like slavery, ending of the 13th Amendment, hasn't really gone away. It's just been transformed into other institutions that are part of the American life.
Right.
Yeah.
And but again, it's just the idea, if Bowman as a teacher, as an academic, knew this, and he might not, given what we learn in even in higher ed, but if he knew this and failed to not share it, you know, like, then I think he kind of did a disservice to us, you know, in that room. But on the other hand, he spoke to the crowd that he was in, not necessarily to me, but to most of the other people there, you know. And so, you know, but I think it just kind of goes to show, you know, like, this is just another way that the Democrats are very complicit, even like, you know, even within their history, you know, like, because all of this racist shit, you know, is stemming from class.
Correct.
You know, and especially like, we don't talk about this enough, but especially in academia, you know, there's a reason why like Boston's known as a racist city for a reason. This is part of it, you know, and the history goes way back, you know, and we don't even have to go back that far.
No,
the idea that these few but very powerful white men were very powerful in changing policy that still affects us to this very day. And so the fact that Bowman failed to mention all of that, ironically talking about that in his speech, huge disservice.
And Collin, not only he did, and again, you mentioned him, Jamaal Bowman, as an educator, and of course that is true. But long before he got a doctorate in education, he was a Black person. He was born a Black person, and I think it's incumbent upon him as a Black person to speak about this. But that is, I think, the bigger disservice. It's one thing to know about it and not talk about it in front of a room of teachers in Washington, D.C. It's another thing to know about it and not talk about it and see how how eugenics adversely affects Black people, or let's go even more esoterically, how it affects not anybody who is not white and of a particular class in the United States. That, I think, is the bigger issue. It's one thing to, you know, to say, oh, well, I'm talking to a group of teachers, I don't want to talk about it in depth. But come on, he's a Black person. He should be talking about this. He should be talking about this. And he should be drawing the obvious connections between eugenics and how racist it was back then, and how racist it is now, and how that racism is part of the DNA of the United States of America. More specifically, the United States Constitution. And let's remember how many, you know, the Constitution was ratified obviously in Philadelphia, and Philadelphia certainly has its racism and its racist history. But many of these laws were originally written in and around the Boston metropolitan area years ago. Before, you see where I'm going with this? So, and again, Collin, you know how I get on. I mean, something that I've talked about on numerous occasions, obviously, is reparations for American descendants of enslaved Africans, but not only American descendants of enslaved Africans, but reparations for anybody who was colonized by any sort of European power. But I think just as importantly is a complete revision of the United States Constitution, because the United States Constitution doesn't serve everybody. It never has, and it never will. I mean, we all have phones, we all have computers. The United States Constitution is essentially the operating system of the United States government. And every few weeks or few months, you get a software update on your phone, or you get an update to your laptops or your PCs, et cetera. When was the last time the United States Constitution had an update?
When we repealed prohibition, pretty sure.
Well, the 27th Amendment was, I want to say, about 30 years ago. So we're probably talking 1992. But when we're talking about the true pieces of legislation that actually matter in the United States, realistically, the first, we talk about 13th Amendment ending slavery, 14th Amendment equal protection under the law, 15th Amendment allowing Black men the right to vote, 19th Amendment allowing women the right to vote, the 23rd Amendment allowing people in Washington, D.C. to vote for the presidency of the United States. We're talking about hundreds of years of legislation that was built to essentially serve white men, wealthy, white, land-owning, Black people-owning men. That's really what we're dealing with. And quite honestly, much has changed since the ratification of the the Constitution on March 4th, 1789. So up until the 13th Amendment, people like me and Collin weren't considered human beings. We were considered property.
Right.
Mhm.
So I think if we're going to go ahead and talk about anything involving eugenics, involving the history of the United States, we need to not only look at critical race theory more intensely and with more granularity, but we also need to take a look at the United States Constitution. Because if we're going to go ahead and move forward as a functioning democracy, then the standard for which that democracy rests upon must also be changed, and changed permanently.
Yeah. Great stuff, man.
Yeah. Joe Nice, you got time. I know you're on borrowed time, but you got enough time for one more before we let you go. This relates. So this story, I hate to move on, but I think we're definitely going to do a part 2 next week. So this story, which, and I wanted to put in this story because this is something that Bowman has control over, that he hasn't mentioned yet. And this is close to my heart as a teacher. End of free school meals will be catastrophic for kids. This was an article from Truthout published last month. When Congress passed a $1.5 trillion omnibus spending bill in March, anti-hunger advocates were stunned that appropriations to eliminate child hunger worsened by the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic were not included.
I can hit buttons, couldn't I? That would work.
Sorry. A month earlier, more than 2,000 organizations signed a letter initiating by the 52-year-old Food Research and Action Center to demand that Congress continue to allow schools to sidestep a host of rules that pre-COVID meant means testing student eligibility for school breakfast and lunch programs and restricting what was served and where it was served. The COVID pandemic is far from over, the letter stated. Families continue to need support, particularly Black, Hispanic, and Indigenous families who disproportionately lack reliable access to healthy meals. School nutrition departments and community sponsors still struggle to operate under the unique circumstances created by the pandemic. Before the pandemic, we spent millions of dollars a year on paperwork. Joel Berg, CEO of Hunger Free America, a New York City-based advocacy and direct service organization, told Truthout. It was and is counterproductive. We know that food is key to educational advancement. If a kid hasn't eaten breakfast by 2 p.m., the head will be on the desk and they will be napping. Universal school meals increase attendance, improve health, and give children a good start in life. When we force people to fill out forms to prove they're eligible, we're essentially spending money to keep food away from kids who need it. Even if lawmakers do not care about the morality of letting kids go hungry, the bottom line is that kids can't study and learn unless they're well fed, Berg said. At the same time, the pandemic has made providing high quality, nutritious food increasingly difficult. Those unique circumstances, of course, shuttered schools in March 2020, and the letter reminded lawmakers that because of the unprecedented health crisis, Congress gave the U.S. Department of Agriculture, which oversees school meal programs, the authority to issue nationwide child nutrition waivers to address access and operational challenges created by the fast-spreading virus. In short order, schools began to make grab-and-go lunches and breakfast available for pickup at designated sites, allowing school buses to drop off meals at students' homes, and extended eligibility for meals to every student, regardless of family income. When schools reopened months later, no-cost meals, and in some cases, after-school snacks, continue to be provided to each and every pupil. But unless Congress acts, these changes will expire on June 30th. That's 2 weeks. Advocate says that this will have a catastrophic impact, not just on students, but also on food service staff and school administration. Without an extension of waivers, schools will have to revert to a free tiered system. Free meals given to those at or below 130% of federal poverty child guidelines. Not going to read all of that, but you do free meals for those between 131 and 185% of the guidelines, and full payers whose whose per meal fee is set by local school authorities.
Right.
Schools are short-staffed and food prices have skyrocketed. Diane Pratt-Havener, Director of Media Relations at the School Nutrition Association, a professional organization representing more than 50,000 food service workers and agencies, told Truthout. But thanks to the waivers, schools have been reimbursed at a rate of $4.56 per lunch, as opposed to $3.75, which is what they received pre-COVID. This makes a big difference. Going back to the lower reimbursement rate, she explains, will be devastated by because of escalating food, labor, and fuel costs. The idea that it's time to get back to normal, but what schools are facing is not close to normal, Pratt-Havener said. There are huge supply chain issues and many families are struggling with unemployment, the high cost of gasoline, and health issues. People who are slightly above the federal poverty threshold are still having trouble making ends meet. And if their kids are no longer eligible for free meals, it will be a huge loss. So Julian Meyer, director of No Kid Hungry, a campaign for Share Our Strength, a national nonprofit that works to end hunger and poverty in the US and throughout the world, told Truthout that the waivers have given schools a cushion and breathing room to mitigate shortages. There has been an increase, there has been difficulty finding bread, ketchup, and ground beef, she said. We have been hearing stories of school staff going to Kroger's or Costco at 4 a.m. to pick up supplies. Many people are going above and beyond to make sure kids have enough nutritious food to eat. Not extending the waivers is hitting these programs when they're already down. Everyone wants to return to normal, but normal isn't here yet. The waivers allow non-congregate meal sites to offer food and authorize the bundling of more than one meal at a time when schools are closed. This was helpful to staff preparing the food as well to food recipients. Anti-hunger advocates are in complete agreement and are working with Congress to see if waiver extensions can be added to pending legislation. We need Congress to act now or the next school year will be derailed, Meyer said. Yes, there are a lot of competing issues and it's easy for something like school meals and nutrition programs to get lost, but advocates are not calling it a day. All of the anti-hunger groups have been relentless in pushing Capitol Hill and the White House to do something, and we're looking for any bill that can be amended to include waiver extensions. We know that time is of the essence. We also know that it's quickly running out. So I wanted to put in this story to kind of contrast with, again, Congressman Bowman, why he has, you're quick to talk about the great replacement theory and quick to talk about eugenics, but you're failing to talk about something that you can handle in 2 seconds. And I'm siding with him as a teacher that he should be concerned about this. And I haven't seen any tweet of him or anyone really in Congress addressing this.
Where's the squad in lockstep on this issue? Where are they? All the progressives, this should be a no-brainer.
Right. And this is something that's easy. You know, this is universal school lunches.
Everyone can understand this.
Yeah, everyone can understand that. And like, as someone who has had to do this in the past, like, it's a lot of red tape to try and figure out which students should get free lunch, which students get reduced lunch, which students can have to pay full price. And then many schools, especially for families, if they like cannot pay, you know, you hear of horror stories of, you know, like students, you know, having to like have a credit that if they don't pay up, that they don't eat, or something worse than that.
Or if they have a credit and they don't pay up, they're not allowed to graduate.
Right. Literally not allowed to like get the actual education.
Right. This is the other student loan debt that is not being discussed. And to kind of go along with this entire article you just mentioned, I think everybody's missing the bigger point in all of this. Having school lunches is a Band-Aid to a much bigger problem. The two words that were not present in that article were food deserts. Right. Food deserts are the real problem why there is a lack of access to healthy meals, I think, as mentioned in the first or second slide. That's where we need to take a look at this. It's more than just offering free school lunches to school kids. That's fine. That's all well and good, great, perfect. What we need to be looking at is why these particular communities need school lunch programs in the first place. That's what we need to be looking at. We need to be looking why these Black, brown, and indigenous populations routinely and consistently don't have access to fresh, healthy food options in their communities. And that comes from wealth inequality, that comes from food deserts. And when we talk about food deserts, the United States Department of Agriculture also discusses 3 other types of food insecurity geographically defined areas. You have a food swamp, you have a food oasis, and you have a food mirage. And you're probably like, well, Joe, I've never heard of these things. These are interesting. I've never heard of such things. A food swamp is when you have an overabundance of healthy food options in a particular geographic area. So you might have a Whole Foods, a Trader Joe's, and a Publix within about a mile or a half mile of each other. And what some of you all might know this, I have 2 master's degrees. My second master's degree is from Wake Forest University. There is an area of Stretford Road and Miller Streets in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, where there are 2 Publixes, a Publix, 2 Harris Teeters, a Trader Joe's, and a Whole Foods within 3/4 of a mile of each other. 5 grocery stores. And there's a Walmart neighborhood food market about a half mile past the Harris Teeter. So again, food swamp. A food oasis is when you have an overabundance of corner stores, fast food establishments, liquor stores, and convenience stores, but they don't offer healthy, fresh food options or nutritious food or affordable food. So you'll have a bunch of corner stores, bodegas, etc. And then you have a food mirage, which you're seeing more of right now. A food mirage is when you have healthy food options that are available, but you can't afford to buy the food.
Right.
You can't afford it. And we're seeing that now more and more. So what I would like to see Jamaal, Bowman, members of the squad, etc., take a look at is not only reinstituting this school lunch program, but take a look as to why food deserts exist and deal with the wealth inequality that creates the food deserts, that creates the lack of access to healthy meals. So the need to have this, so we can eliminate the need to have this school lunch program in the first place. Because again, we're not looking at the root causes. What we're looking at is the superficial problem and a superficial solution to the problem without addressing the root cause of the problem. The root cause of the problem is wealth inequality. The root cause of the problem is lack of jobs. The root cause of the problem is institutionalized racism. Look at these causes first. Look at those causes first, then behave accordingly, then move accordingly, then figure out why these communities have food deserts. Figure out why the people in these communities can't afford to buy food or why there's no grocery stores in the area. The United States Department of Agriculture defines a grocery store as having the 7 particular types of food. 7 particular types of food. Those types of food, I'm trying to remember them off the top of my head. My gosh, it's been a while since I talked about this. Grains, it's actually fruits, vegetables, poultry, fish, dairy, grains and cereals, and oh gosh, what's the last one? Breads.
Okay.
Breads. I think those are the 7 types of food that you need to qualify as a grocery store. So in many instances, you'll have a bodega that might be able to have 3 or 4 of them, but they won't have all 7 types. So technically, they're not classified as a grocery store. You might have convenience stores that will offer, milk, bread, etc. Or what you're seeing more of right now, because people are unable to afford basic food items, you're seeing the rise of bread and milk at dollar stores. You're seeing this happen more often. And if you've been in a dollar store, and there's crazily enough, plenty of dollar stores around near where I live, you're going to see more bread and milk and eggs at dollar stores. And they're being sold at comparable prices to grocery stores because they understand that the clientele that enters a dollar store can't afford other types of food. So they're relegated to bread, milk, eggs. You're seeing that a lot now. So again, I understand the need to have school lunch programs, but address the root cause first, please.
Right.
Get to that.
Right.
Well, on top of all that, we're still spending, I mean, we talked about this last time and it's still relevant, the amount of military spending that we're doing right now and abroad, right? When we can't get baby formula to baby, like we can't, our food centers are literally burning.
Right.
Like I think 7 of like the major food centers went up, you know? So between that and like, you know, the pandemic that already caused a shortage due to like supply line stuff, you know, we're now looking at a food crisis everywhere, and cutting these kids' food is even worse to me. You know?
And let's not forget, Jamaal Bowman's in New York. He's a state representative from, I want to say, Yonkers, Bronx, New York, etc.
Yeah.
You realize that this was just announced a couple of days ago. The median price of rent in Manhattan is around $4,000 a month. Median price of rent is $4,000 a month. And homeless services and education were cut by $200 million in New York City. And part of that homeless services and education budget will also be involved in feeding people who need food, like school kids who don't have access to a grocery store and access to fresh fruit and vegetables, etc., in the daytime, and homeless people that need something to eat. Yet the police budget still remains over 10 billion American dollars
and growing
in New York City. The New York City Police Department's budget is bigger than the entire police department or state police departments of 48 states in the United States. I'm going to say that again just to make sure you understand how grotesquely exorbitant and expensive and costly the New York City Police Department budget is. The New York City Police Department budget is $10.4 billion. That $10.4 billion is bigger than the state police department budgets of 48 states. So when we talk about state police department, we're not talking just state police. We're talking local, regional, in a particular state. So for example, all of the entire police department budget for every single police department in the state I live in North Carolina is less than the New York City Police Department's budget. Think about that. You don't think $10.4 billion can go to feed some school kids? It can feed every kid in New York City. It can feed every kid in New York State.
Right.
You don't think $10.4 billion can reduce and eliminate the homeless situation in New York City? Could do a lot for that. But Jamaal Bowman doesn't want to talk about this stuff because that doesn't get him votes. He will be seen as too black for a white establishment. He'll be seen as too fight the power or too woke for his constituents and for his donors. But he wants to go ahead and talk about having a hip hop month instead of fighting for legislation that actually helps people on a day-to-day basis. This is why, look, I got a few followers on Twitter, a few followers on Instagram. I could find 538 people at random, and they would do a better job than the current Congress of the United States right now. 538. I could find 538 random people, and they will be better than what we've got right now. Because what we've got in the United States right now stinks. It stinks. They don't work for anybody. They work for themselves. They're careerists. They're opportunists. They are in servitude to their donors. It's ridiculous. And again, something that I think America needs now more than ever right now. And if you follow my Instagram, you'll see me wearing a yellow vest on every Saturday show that I play. America needs a yellow vest movement. America needs a worker-led movement across the United States, not only intra-industry, but inter-industry. We need to shut everything down in this country until Congress obeys the people that put them into the halls of Washington, D.C. It's ridiculous what's happening right now in this country. Absolutely ridiculous. $54 billion for the Ukraine. $54 billion for the Ukraine. And again,
and they give him more.
And
they just announced it today. They're giving more.
Yeah, another billion.
Another $1 billion. Another $1 billion. Another $1 billion. Another $1 billion. we all saw what happened on May 25th, 2020 with George Floyd and the summer of 2020 and how many Black people were killed at their hands by racist police officers. Again, the Asian American and Pacific Islander community got a hate crime legislation bill. Crime. Where is the hate crime legislation for Black people? Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? We saw 10 Black people get slaughtered about a month ago. Again, Jamaal Bowman mentioned it in his speech a few minutes ago. We saw 10 Black people get slaughtered at a grocery store in Buffalo, New York. And that grocery store served as a community hub because it was the only grocery store in the area. So this person who killed all these people knew that there would be a load of Black people inside that grocery store because it's the only grocery store that serves that community. Again, going back to food insecurity. Where is the legislation for Black people? Where is it? Debbie Wasserman Schultz, I want to say less than a week ago, introduced a House resolution that acknowledges the hate crimes directed towards the Jewish community. And again, I have no problem with that. But Black people don't even have a House resolution acknowledging that there is an attack on Black life in the United States. Not even a House resolution. And a House resolution, all a House resolution is an agreement by the members of the House to acknowledge that there is a problem that's taking place in the United States. It's not even a law that is intended to get voted on and hopefully become law or get passed. It's just an acknowledgement of a particular social condition in the United States or a political condition in the United States. We can't even get that in the United States.
Yeah.
So again, I'm Collin, and for the viewers, Collin and I are multinational brothers. We multiple citizenships in multiple countries, and we've routinely talked about this. My time in this country is up. The sand is filling in the bottom of the hourglass. I'm currently finishing up reading Chris Hedges' magnificent book, America: The Farewell Tour. And this is the farewell tour of the United States. America is circling the drain. America has started from the bottom and it's slowly working its way down. And it's currently being accelerated by the rise of the Christian right. It's currently being accelerated by the military-industrial complex. It's being accelerated by massive hyperinflation, a lack of jobs, a lack of healthcare, and a political system that doesn't serve everybody.
Yep.
Yeah.
They won't even do the basic stuff, like let alone like the basic identity things that they probably all of them should know better and do anyway. They won't even do the basic economics to actually help the people that are struggling. The class divide is ridiculous.
Because it's not sexy. It's not.
Yeah, but they can get pay-go.
But yeah, it's not like provocative enough. You need to have the liberal vote, and this is the kind of stuff that, like the liberals, especially like in white suburbia, will care about more than, kids getting guaranteed to get fed, at their school. So it just kind of shows you where our priorities are, just as far as, just even in the article, like there's so much paperwork to fill out if you're low income, like that's backwards. So give kids food, and I mean the food ain't great, honestly, but give kids food. There shouldn't have to be an issue, as far as, at school, a kid should be fed. Anyone who needs it should get it, no questions asked. Because half the food that we're getting, we're throwing away anyway.
Yeah.
And I'll admit, in part because the food is bad, but it's just, yeah.
I mean, the thing that they want to keep you from knowing is that we could all be like incredibly wealthy if the resources were shared. Like the fact that it's all under some rich asshole's like mattress right now, just in numbers, pretty much. It's not even real things, and they're stealing it from the global south and, the classes below them. So, until they're threatened to do something different, which, you know, I'm happy that people are starting to get in the streets, but like, you know, until someone starts like sharpening the guillotines, like, you know, in my opinion, things don't change until we hit further rock bottom, you know? So.
But how much lower can we go?
I know. How
much lower can we go?
Yep.
What's it going to take?
Yep.
What's it going to take for the working class of the United States to shut everything down?
Mm-hmm.
People are not, because people are not, well, one, people are not desperate enough. And two, people feel like they're have a lot to lose. There is, which is legit. There is a lot for, it doesn't work like in Europe, you can get away with it because at least in Europe, you have a lot of basic socialist systems that you can do this.
Yeah.
You know, you can afford to strike, like even in like London, you know, they're striking on the tube. I think it was yesterday.
That's correct.
Not today.
Well,
you know, and they do this all the time.
I was just in London 3 weeks ago. There was a bus strike, a bus driver's strike. And you want to mess with Londoners? Have a bus strike on a couple of different bus lines and see what happens. See what happens.
So, like in Europe, it's common, but they can do it because they have
the means and resources to do so.
To do it, we don't here.
Right.
And
well, and you'll see in our next story, right, how they co-opt the movements we do have. You know. So,
by the way, Joe, I know, like,
you got a life and stuff to take care of, and you know.
But any final words before you go, and where can people find you?
Yeah, first of all, thank you guys for having me on. I appreciate both of you a whole lot. Everyone can find me all the same social media outlets: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, SoundCloud, Mixcloud. Joe Nice DJ, JoeNice DJ. And you know you're seeing the shirt right now. It's the Harriet Tubman $20 t-shirt. It's part of the Money series on my website. You can also check out the merch at www.joenicedj.net, joenicedj.net. There's loads of designs on the website, including the Money series. Money series has been around for a while now. It's more than just a Harriet Tubman on a $20 bill. We got Martin Luther King on the 1, John Brown on the 2, Sojourner Truth on the 5, Frederick Douglass on the 10, obviously Harriet Tubman on the 20. We got Rosa Parks on the 50 and Malcolm X on the 100.
I like that.
Thank you. Part of changing the narrative of the United States is making sure that we get rid of people who we have a more representation of our money. And let's face it, Black people built this country. Not only Black men, but Black women were involved in building this country. So, and I think it's abhorrent to have white supremacists, warmongers, rapists, and enslavers on our money, when we should have people that live up to the ideals of humanity, freedom, equality, and survival on our money. And the people who are on the money, who are part of the Money series, live up to those ideals. So that's why I wanted to go ahead and have it. I want to make sure that people can go ahead and get the merch, because I always say with my merch, it's merch with a message and clothing with a conscience. So that's it. And I also want to thank my little baby girl, Parker, for being the best 11-year-old baby girl of all time.
All right.
Nice.
Yeah. Joe, thank you so much for being on. We definitely need to have you again. Always a pleasure. And yeah, we'll connect, and yeah, definitely make sure I put all your link, most of them, and I'll update it later, but at least for Twitter, Instagram. And you do IG lives frequently. So
yeah, I'm on IG.
Well, at least I know, like, you were traveling, but at least when you're able.
A lot. Yeah, it's been a lot of travel recently. I was just in Los Angeles all last week, and the week before that, I was in Europe for a month, traveling around playing shows again. And it's interesting being overseas, seeing how people view the United States and how crazy the United States is right now. And to a man and woman over there, when I was hanging out, the general consensus is, oh my gosh, the United States does that? Yeah. Or, Joe, why are you still there? What?
Right.
Yeah.
People have, and I think if Americans understood the perception of America around the world, maybe America would be embarrassed enough to change its ways.
I'm sorry, but I'm not convinced of that at all, because I think people just hide behind the isolationism and just the myth that we are good, and even if you travel and not for everybody, but because even if you travel, you can just kind of still stick to your mindset. So you have to go out and stay out for a while and really allow yourself to really kind of see another way of doing things before you're able to kind of convert your mind to a different mindset. And I don't think many people are necessarily willing to do that.
Or have the means to do it.
Absolutely.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And going to St. Thomas doesn't count.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not going
Agreed.
to cut it.
All right, boys.
Man.
Appreciate you coming on. We'll definitely do it again.
Thanks.
Yep. You should find that hang up button somewhere over in there that way. There you go. And luckily I set up that, except why does the cam not the camera? See, now people see too much. They're seeing behind the curtain,
It's not a bad thing.
You have to go here and then no, my big face and then there. And I'm sending this other person a link as well. If they're in the chat, you should have just got that on Discord. But anyway, yeah, Joe Nice was great. I always appreciate.
Speaking of someone who needs to wear a yellow vest,
yes,
instead of Gucci,
yes, yep.
Segue too bad. He can stay, but you want to get into your story, Reef?
We'll do once we get this third person in here that wanted in here, or that might want in here. In fact, I need to real quick go to studio mode and go to INN3 person and find this one. There we go. That's close enough. I'll fix it in a minute. But anyway,
we've been working on that. Please make sure you subscribe to us, because I think people are saying, or have been saying, that the YouTube overlords have been unsubscribing people, which is kind of, honestly, I'm kind of surprised that that's been happening, given that we're a growing but still very much a baby channel and network right now. So please make sure. But that being said, thank you guys. We've had an explosion of subs, over the last 2 weeks. We're definitely we're pretty close to 500 right now. So we definitely are trying to get to that 1,000 goal. So definitely subscribe and share.
We continue to be shadow banned constantly on Twitter and that kind of stuff. So if you ever see stuff from INN or whatever, links in the description down below. If you're not following us on Twitter, you should be doing, but you can find it in that INN link tree down below. But we get retweets from lots of your favorite people and then nothing. So we'll figure that out. But I've not heard back from this cat. So speaking of cat, there's a puppo. I guess we can kind of get started, and he'll probably jump in at some point.
Do you want to do the Christmas story?
Yes, I do. We'll get there. But anyway, let's I had to get my buttons to work. There we go. All right.
Sorry, I said more dancing girls.
Yes,
needed.
I will have to find some of those. Hold on. Speaking of dancing girls, my dog demanding to come inside. Your throne, Puppo, please. No, you're not going to take that? You're not going to get in your spot?
That's more behind the scenes stuff. Reef and I talk fairly regularly in our Discord chat, and this is kind of what we do.
Yes.
A lot.
Mm-hmm. Very much so. But
talk, and he talks to his pets.
Yes, pretty much. Children. My little fur babies. So, I saw this the other day. This is from, we found this on Twitter from @Nina Puliano, I think, right? Yeah. And she's citing this courthouse news segment on Christian Smalls. And we've been covering Mr. Smalls here for a minute now. So, we wanted to continue to do so. But Amazon loses bid to keep union hearing secret, right? So the internet behemoth is challenging the results of its warehouse employee elections, blaming its success on unfair tactics by organizers in the National Labor Relations Board. So, they're coming at this particular union. So Brooklyn, Amazon can't shut the police out of a hearing where it will try to overturn its employees' first successful union election in the United States. The Federal Labor Board ruled Thursday, which I think that was last Thursday, pretty sure. The e-commerce and web services giant is pushing back against the history-making vote, which in April formed an independent union at the Staten Island facility known as JFK-8. It accused the National Labor Relations Board, the NLRB, of inappropriately leading the Amazon labor union to victory, and the union itself of coercing and misleading voters. Amazon asked that only the trial team's hearing officer and testifying witness attend the hearing. It would be virtually impossible to ensure the proper sequestration of witnesses unless access is limited, the company argued in motion. The Labor Board noted its longstanding policy of public access while denying the bid. The board hearings are not secret, reads the 3-page order penned Corneli Overstreet, regional director of the NLRB's office in Phoenix, Arizona. Accordingly, preventing the public from viewing its important process is not an option. Led by workers who were fired after protesting inadequate COVID-19 protections in the early days of the pandemic, the union grabbed headlines with warehouse workers, a collective David standing up to a Goliath with $1 trillion market cap. All the more reason to keep it in the public eye, the board reasoned. That this case has garnered national and international attention from outside parties only further solidifies the importance of allowing public observation, as employees and members of the public can be better informed of the purposes and policies of the act. Amazon labor union attorney Eric Milner celebrated the decision. Amazon wanted to conduct a secret hearing so no one could hear how ridiculous their objections were, Milner told Courthouse News via email. The workers that participated in the election deserve transparency. Amazon did not immediately return a request for comment. About 55% of voters supported the union at the Staten Island facility. The hard-earned win followed a year of building bonds, organizers said, including helping fired workers pay their bills and hosting 20-something employee barbecues. Despite the win at the JFK-8 facility, a union election at another Staten Island facility known as LDJ5 came up short. Organizers blamed the outcome on Amazon stepping up its anti-union efforts. In its objection to the successful election, Amazon argued that the labor board's most glaring transgression was its filing of a federal lawsuit a week before the election, accusing the company of unfairly firing Gerald Bryson, an employee who was fired after attending a protest against lagging pandemic protocols that proceeded in ongoing, but in the meantime, an administrative law judge has ordered Amazon to reinstate Bryson. So, also, let go post-protest was Christian Smalls, a former employee who is now president of the ALU. Internal messages show that an Amazon human resources employee had multiple concerns about firing Smalls, including that Smalls had a right to attend the peaceful, socially distanced protest, and that his termination is going to be perceived as retaliation. So, Collin, I know you sent this to me, I'm pretty sure. That
shout out to Franco, I believe, who tweeted this out over the weekend. And then, I knew you were doing the story, so I sent this to you.
Yes. So, and this is kind of continuation of these practices. So, fired Cleveland area Amazon worker speaks out, says union effort led to dismissal, right? And this is from Cleveland.com, Sean McDonald. North Randall, Ohio, a former Amazon worker who's trying to unionize his workplace is speaking out after being fired from his fulfillment center in North Randall and filed a complaint now being investigated by the NLRB Joey Desatnik started working at the CLE2 fulfillment center just southeast of Cleveland in August 2020, but didn't start trying to organize a union until the end of March. Desatnik said he wasn't subtle, openly talked about it on breaks, and even standing outside the building on his off time, getting a list of about 230 other workers interested in unionizing. When I started this, I just went full swing at it, Desatnik said. We should not have to do this in the dark. Desatnik was let go on April 19th, officially for a security infraction. He said he was told and being dismissed. He believes he was actually fired for leading a union effort. Amazon, however, disputes Desatnik's take on what happened, saying Desatnik's union aspirations did not factor into his firing. The facts of this termination are clear and completely unrelated to whether Mr. Desatnik supports any particular cause or group, Amazon spokesperson Kelly Nantle said in an emailed statement in response to questions from Cleveland.com. Safety at our sites is a top priority, and after a detailed investigation, we determined that he intentionally avoided standard security screening to the point of getting aggressive with security personnel. This behavior, in addition to the blatant security violations, is not tolerated in our facilities, and the appropriate steps were taken on behalf of all employees at CLE2. So,
you know what? Just very quick. This sounds very reminiscent to what happened to Chris Smalls. Like
yes.
Almost the exact same language. Like he was considered like he wanted to unionize, so he was kind of determined as
a security risk.
Threat, as a security risk.
Mm-hmm.
Same exact thing.
Union worker says Amazon used vague security issue to get rid of him. Desatnik filed an unfair labor practice charge against Amazon on May 16th. If Amazon is found in the wrong, the company could have to reinstate Desatnik with back pay, share information about the case to other workers, and post notices reminding workers of their organizing rights. Desatnik is one of about 2,500 employees at the North Randall facility. The 885,000 square foot fulfillment center opened in September 2018 on the site of the old Randall Park Mall. It was one of several fulfillment centers now in Northeast Ohio. Soon, after he started talking about unionizing, Desatnik said he was warned by coworkers that supervisors were watching him closely. On April 8th, Desatnik said a supervisor wouldn't give him ice for his knee. When he complained, he was suspended for his attitude, but he was called back to work the next day, he said. And this is Desatnik himself. Yeah. A week or so later, he was told he was being fired for a security infraction earlier in the month, Desatnik said. Desatnik said workers have to walk through multiple metal detectors and occasionally go through further screening by security guards when leaving the building. He said his manager said in firing him over the phone that he didn't comply with security, although he said he doesn't remember doing anything differently. Desatnik said he believes the real reason for his firing was he was outspoken about his want to unionize the fulfillment center. It isn't the first time the company has been accused of firing workers involved in a union effort. For example, 2 workers helped unionize a warehouse in Staten Island. Right. And another worker who led the protest in the company in 2020 was reinstated after he fired an unfair labor charge. The NLRB is still investigating Desatnik's complaint. If an investigator thinks a complaint has merit, several things can happen. An investigator can take a complaint to a hearing where an administrative law judge can dismiss a complaint or force a company to cease and desist. In the case of a firing, a company could have to reinstate a worker and pay lost wages. They could also have to post a notice to all employees in a break room or over email telling them the company actually unlawfully and reminding workers of their rights. The company acted unlawfully. Before that happens, investigators can get an injunction from a federal court, or a worker and a company can reach a settlement. More than 90% of meritorious unfair labor practice cases are settled by agreement at some point in the process, according to the NLRB. So Desatnik said this is why he wants to unionize Amazon. He told Cleveland.com he was once proud to work at the Amazon facility. He had won an All-Star Award and became a trainer. But when pandemic-related restrictions started getting lifted, rules at the facility started getting stricter. Desatnik said managers from his part of the fulfillment center were moved somewhere else and new management came in. Desatnik said supervisors were using the computers and write-ups as a modern-day whip. He said the write-ups were used to speed workers or to get rid of them. Amazon has been accused in the past of not wanting employees to be around long-term. You're now a detriment the longer you're there, Desatnik said. They'd rather fire you and hire someone coming in making less than you. He said that the company also treats workers differently if they have an injury. Desatnik said he had to fight with Amazon and get a doctor's note in order to get accommodation for a knee injury. Even after getting a letter from the medical professional, he said the company treated him differently. The first facility to successfully unionize was in Staten Island under the ALU, which isn't connected to any national unions, which is good. Desatnik has traveled to Staten Island to support the ALU, but said he's working with a larger union to organize the CLE2 Center. He said he's waiting to announce which union until it's further along in the process. The North Shore AFL-CIO has already pledged to support the effort. Of course they do. Desatnik said he's still working towards forming a union despite his firing. They didn't get rid of me, Desatnik said. All they did was make the fire even stronger inside of me. So, Collin, thoughts so far?
I mean, one, shout out to this guy. Two, it's very interesting that his story, unlike Small's, has been completely ignored.
Yeah.
You know, and I would argue in some ways he's gotten a lot worse treatment than Smalls did.
Yeah.
So it kind of makes me, and I hate thinking this way, but it kind of makes me suspect as to how is it that Chris Smalls is getting all this royal treatment in the media,
yes,
and this guy hasn't.
I mean, I also would like to point out I would avoid anything with the AFL-CIO myself personally, forming a union. There's plenty of questions with that organization about how strong they are for unions, and if they, you know, are even a benefit and not a detriment. So
right, but I think even in that, like, like DeSantis traveled to Staten Island, you know, so why is something like this from Chris not mentioned? Well, at least to my knowledge, you know, especially given this story. You know, especially like this is almost verbatim what happened to him. So, you know, this should be more of a reason, you know, like for Chris and like the ALU to really highlight. It's like this is what's happening at these warehouses, and they're doing it again with this guy.
Yeah,
you know, so and so just kind of along with that, you know, Chris, I think more likely now has, you know, like we've kind of reached out to him in like in this space. I know others in this space have reached out to him as of late. As far as I know, he has yet to kind of respond back to any of our, you know, requests or anyone's requests right now to come on any of our channels right now. But like the fact that Chris has a lot more power now, or at least has a lot more say so in what happens, especially now that people in the media have been giving him a lot of attention, like hasn't said any of this at all. So, you know, so yeah, it's just kind of makes me suspect as to what makes Chris special over this guy for both of them going through similar shit. And, you know, and yet this guy is being completely ignored and Chris literally is getting the royal treatment. Yeah.
Well, and he seems, you know, like the liberal hopeful, you know, to some degree. So, you know, this is the, like, you know, he was at recently, this was June 9th, right? So this is around the same time this guy was getting fired, right? You know, this is kind of like meanwhile, right? You have Christian Smalls, you know, like bumping elbows with the you know, like the highfalutin for the most part. And like, you know, he went to this Time 100 gala, you know, and they've gotten him stuck on this like union drip stuff, right? And I don't know if he's getting, who's pushing that department as far as, you know, promotion for him or whatever, but I don't think the optics are very good.
No.
So, you know, and here he is with, you know, Questlove, Dwayne Wade, right? John Batiste, right? You know, and we've been saying this kind of since like he did that thing with Gucci not that long ago, and we did a whole thing talking about his connection there. You know, and we've been worried, and I'm kind of past worried and think it's actual that he's been co-opted, you know, that to some degree, whether it's through you know, fame here or whatever, but I just wanted people to show people that we're not the only ones seeing this, right? And I just picked a couple of random tweets from this thread. So enough here, which is at no really y'all, the double Y's there. Please do not let these people use you. They are pros. They play for keeps. I'm scared for you. Billionaires suck. Hashtag Medicare for all at real_Anna Bird. This is how movements are co-opted, then regulated to history. Very sad indeed. Joshua Queen at Joshua Neal Queen. You accomplish more for working folks than these clowns ever pretended or tried to do. Without their help, none of these losers show up for us. Don't fall for their glam shit. Too bad. At Questlove recently crossed a picket line for a party. Hope y'all don't lose the plot. So, I mean, I definitely see some other people getting this. At Brittany the Whole, one of those. But yeah, I mean, this is kind of the way we've been feeling for a minute now.
Right.
So,
and yeah, people were kind of like, oh, like, you know,
right.
He's trying to do his best or whatever else. But yeah, I mean, I'm sorry, but what advice is he going to get from Zendaya as far as organizing?
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't consider, like, I don't know Zendaya to do any of that kind of shit.
Right.
So, or even care, you know, so it's just the idea of like, you know, just being able to use the fame. I think in his mind, it's like, oh, if I get enough fame and then I can kind of mention my story or my message, then people will listen to me and then things will get done. I think in his mind, but you know, like, and I shared this, you know, last week, you know, like with Ronald Reagan, like they don't like, the elite do not like this, you know, like, and this is kind of why I kind of say, you know, the idea of having like an education that talks about revolution, is not going to happen in this country. You know, like, look what happened, you know, again, I always suggest for people to go back and watch that clip where I talk about Ronald Reagan. Like, he kind of, you know, like called out college students, you know, especially during the Vietnam War, because there were, and like the civil rights movement, you know, he basically called them out for being like scum, you know, because they were actually trying to very much anti-establishment. So as a result of that, he defunded schools, you know, as a way to kind of break them down and for schools not to kind of promote any, you know, like direct action. So like, and I wish that was the kind of history / learning that is being taught in school, because then Chris would know better that this is the ploy of the establishment to really rig him. And it's very easy to do it, given that I don't know his history, but I guess, you know, working middle class, you're not making a whole lot. It's very easy to kind of take people like with nice clothes, you know, hang out with a couple celebrities, eat a couple nice meals. You know, now I hear like he is in talks of writing a memoir.
Well, I've got that queued up. So,
all right.
Friend of the show, Franco, had this to say: if time, Biden and other elites are accepting you into your circle, they are not afraid of you. This isn't accomplishing anything for working class people. I couldn't agree more there, Frank. You know, I know you and you had Shadowban talk about his last visit to the White House, where you talked about how bad the PRO Act, which he was calling for, is actually a detriment to the ALU, and if enacted, would have meant that the ALU wouldn't have existed because it's not partnered with the AFL-CIO. So, but people should go check that stream out from Frank and them. But, I've been seeing this a lot on Twitter, right? Where this is at Ibarra11, who's friends with some friends of ours. Sorry, but I don't know how to see this photo in a positive light. So yeah, I mean, I can't either. Can you think of other than like the basic promotion of this?
No,
right? Which like it doesn't even promote anything that you're like, it promotes you essentially.
Yeah, I'm seeing Born Center Cold World in the chat, and they're saying, I can't say for sure that co-opted, but I don't know any poor unemployed person who has new brand name clothes and sneakers every time you see them.
Yeah.
From tax to rich to posing with them is giving me AOCTs. Exactly.
Yes, very much so. And we've made the direct correlation in previous, videos of how it's very similar to AOC. But yeah, I do believe so. The whole dripped out thing. I think it's just, having the nice threads and whatever, but I noticed some people were not necessarily happy with these thoughts, as we tend to run into when we've said these things too. Can the Hammer and Sickle crew occasionally please chill the fuck out? I'm sorry, how about no? How about no? And I'm not even part of the Hammer and Sickle crew, but like,
right.
Like, no. And again, I don't trust anyone who betrays Chris Smalls like this. They're already like, what? You cannot put him on this gigantic pedestal that you have like set him upon. Like,
right.
He's one person that can make mistakes and probably has tons of handlers and whatever that can make mistakes. And again, if I could speak to you, Mr. Smalls, I feel like whoever's telling you to do these things, get them away from you. Like, they are not your friends.
Right.
So, well, at the same time, you're supposedly not working, right? Like,
But I think that's the gag, is the idea, because he's unemployed, then it's like, oh, we'll give him money, we'll give him clothes, and like he'll be good. And like,
do you think he got paid for this appearance?
So I think that's just it. It's like, because he's unemployed, that is like, he's even more get very easily snatched up.
Do you think he's paid for these appearances? Like, I'm for sure that specific one, the time one and whatever?
I'm sure he is. He has to be. Yeah. Or at least he's getting free shit out of it.
Yes.
So but again, it's like, I think in this day and age, you don't have to do a whole lot, really. Like, you can just give people like some nice clothes, or like exposure to shit, or just the idea of, or just the opportunity to just stand next to a celebrity, and people will do it.
Yeah.
So like, I think the standards, in this case, especially in this day and age, are just so low that people would be willing. But yeah, you just made me think of that in terms of, he's unemployed, so it'll be a lot easier to get him versus like someone
if he has his job, right?
Wealth, that may not necessarily need it or care.
So we'll continue with a bit of this tomfoolery. We know this guy. He's tomfoolery incarnate at this point. And with his connection to the Breaking Points network, which we'll get into in a bit, which we haven't even done our full segment on him yet, which that's going to be, you'll want to see that. That's going to be fun. He went out and talked to, I think he had Tina Desiree go out, in fact, you know, where they were in Phoenix, right? Where he was there for like 5 minutes to give a talk and then left, you know. But it does make odd bedfellows when you find this happening. You know, him hanging out with hello nobody, you know. So and they started this hashtag hot labor summer, like like, oh God, just could you just not? Anyway, like, this to me is more like, especially with people who definitely know that she's a disappointment, you know, for the ones who thinks this person is a disappointment, when you gonna say that this person's a disappointment? You know, I mean, I'm waiting. But because, you know, she thinks we're gonna be all right, Collin. I don't know if you remember that, but you know, I don't think we're gonna be all right. I don't know about you. And especially when you're meeting with the AFL-CIO, like.
But you know what? Here's the thing. I wouldn't necessarily mind all of this. I wouldn't mind if, and I've said it in past streams and I'll say it again, I wouldn't mind if he met with, like in this case, like AOC or Bernie or even Nina Turner or anything like that.
Yes.
Like, I wouldn't necessarily mind that if he brought demands.
Right.
Like, would you be willing to do this direct action or whatever else with me and continue to do that until, you know, what such and such, you know? Like, if he was doing all of that, that would be one thing. Yeah, go ahead and meet them. But don't go and meet them just for the photo up to say that you met with them, especially these folks and the guys are saying like, I'm for the labor, I'm for pro worker and all this kind of bullshit. And yet, you know, these are the same people who have not, you know, come to any, you know, they weren't at the marches for Medicare for All last year. They're not gonna, it's definitely not going to attend, you know, this year, you know, that will be in DC next month. You know, so don't put up the facade that you care when this is all for your career. You know? Yeah. And I mean, unfortunately, I just feel like Chris, again, whether you call it naive or just he's just an idiot, like I want to go with the idea he's probably just naive, because I
wish
feel like
I could say that. Like,
well, I'm saying that because, again, like, we don't have the people in our lives right now. Like, the boomers honestly should know better because they went through this shit. And now they're like, kind of like, oh, we got ours, so fuck the rest of y'all.
Do you know who Osho is? You heard that name?
Osho?
You watched Wild Wild Country?
No.
On Netflix. Okay, it's a documentary about a particular guru, right? Who was very popular in like the late 80s, early 90s, right? He I think he started Scream Therapy, honestly. Was one of the big proponents of that too. But anyway, he was very well known for being a prosperity guru, right?
Right.
Where like he was like, oh, you know, having these 8 Rolls Royces is fine. It doesn't mean I'm a bad person and trying to like steal everyone's money, you know, like we're allowed to enjoy the nice things in life. Like that's essentially the thought process, right? You know, and I think that's very much what Chris must be thinking. They're like, why shouldn't I, you know, like get this paper if I'm doing something like this, you know?
Right. And I mean, I get that, but at the same time, it's like,
yeah,
if you're going to get all of that, what is the turnaround for the rest of us? What's going to be the turnaround for like all of the workers who you say you're trying to help? What do they get? They're still suffering they're still suffering and working in those factories while you're hobnobbing with these celebrities. Are you thinking about them?
Right.
You know,
when I was like, here, you may think this is a great idea, and someone told you to ask for the PRO Act, right, in Congress. #ProAct here from the North Shore AFL-CIO over in Cleveland, right? And is pretty much the AFL-CIO love the PRO Act because it essentially makes it to where no unions can exist unless connected to the AFL-CIO. Like,
Right.
so therefore your union wouldn't exist. Like, you can't get more blunt than that. So, you know, shout out Franco and Shadowban and stuff who pointed that out. I know Shadowban's worked with the AFL-CIO directly and knows their ways and means. So he's not a fan. But you were talking about this too, right? The truly, four trulies. Just wanted to point that out. Couldn't be prouder that at Pantheon Books will publish at Shutdown Amazons, that's Chris Small's forthcoming memoir, right? And president of the Amazon Labor Union, Chris Smalls, The Revolution is Here. The David and Goliath story of how the author and a scrappy band of warehouse co-workers made history by unionizing an Amazon warehouse on Staten Island and helped ignite a national labor movement, offering a searing portrait of working class life, as well as a powerful vision for a better, more fair America that working people can create for themselves. To Maria Goldberg at Pantheon, at auction by Jen Marshall at Avitas Creative Management. So yeah, he gets a memoir. Like, I mean, I feel like he's done one thing. You can't give him a memoir yet.
Well,
like,
technically he could, because that's what a memoir is. Like, I had to look this up because you'll, like, people in the chat, you'll know this about me. I have to look up stuff a lot, I think, especially for definitions and shit, just to make sure it's kind of accurate to what people are saying. Technically, he can write a memoir, given that the word itself connotates like a moment in time, which would fit this, versus an autobiography where it talks about your life.
Yes.
So can he write a memoir about this? Sure. You know, is it going to be substantive? No. Because again, this isn't for the working class. This is more for like the suburbanites, you know, the shit libs who like the idea of what in the guise of like, oh, you know, like we're progressive and like we're woke and all this kind of stuff, and look at Chris Smalls and like, but I think also kind of playing into like the almost like the Cinderella story of like the rags to riches story, like how, you know, which like here's this guy, you know, like low income, you know, stands up for the workers and gets his, and the end, versus liberating anybody is what will be missing from the memoir. Like, actually, I'll be curious to see like how they're going to relate this to the working class.
It'll be, you know, super flowery. And like,
but it's not going to be anything substantive in terms of like how to really mobilize people in direct action / mutual aid / strikes, you know, that will actually be substantive for people and not just one person who's now become like the figurehead of.
Well, and it's like they're making the struggle of that even a commodity with this, as Curlfingers points out, right? You know, and they continue. How long is the book? 7 pages. The union even isn't even past all the legal hurdles yet. What the fuck? Crush Renata sounds like Corey Bush. I mean, it reminds me of plenty of the squad members. But I found this quote from John Waters this week that I think does speak to this a little bit, and I think I have to like go big presentation mode so people can read it. When I was young, there were beatniks, hippies, punks, gangsters. Now you're a hacktivist, which I would probably be if I was 20, shutting down MasterCard, but there's no look to that lifestyle. Besides, just wearing a bad outfit with bad posture. Has WikiLeaks caused a look? No. I'm mad about that. If your kid comes out of the bedroom and says he just shut down the government, it seems to me he should at least have an outfit for that. Which, like, you know, I mean, this is John Waters, who made, you know, Divine famous. So I feel like he does have some point to like branding there, but
Right.
Obviously,
right. Because again, going back to the Reagan era, that's what they were called. People who were anti-establishment, that's exactly what they were.
right.
You know, they were the other.
Not knowing, and I think he frankly misses this point of the thing, is that those were the clothes that they were wearing were what were available.
Right.
Like, it's not like, you know, like blue jeans and t-shirt, like with the cigarette rolled under your, like, you know, like that was every man's like outfit because it's what they can afford, you know.
Very
and that's
much
what's happening now,
class.
you know. And I think Ryan Knight put it so eloquently this week. So he says, where's my, there it is. Too many so-called leaders of the movement have been made into celebrities and their revolutionary fervor destroyed by mass media. They became Hollywood objects and lose identification with the real issues. The task is to transform society. Only the people can do that. And that's a quote from Huey Newton.
Yeah.
Do you know Huey Newton? I only know Huey P. Long, so my Hueys are not.
Yeah.
Okay.
At least I've heard the name. But yeah, I think spot on. I think and I think especially in this country, you know, like we buy into the cult of celebrity and personality versus the idea of ideas and fighting for that. But
Right.
you know, but yeah, like we're seeing this now with him. And you know, I hate that we kind of talk about him frequently, but in a way I'm kind of glad, because this should be kind of like a cautionary tale for people, especially like who are looking to be an organizer, or looking to be an activist, who are looking to wreak, you know, systematic change. You know, like it is not a glamorous job, you know, and you know, like it really, you should be poor essentially in a sense doing it. But like, but from that, you're able to activate the base more readily because you don't have anything tying you down that would minimize your message. So the idea, like Chris is kind of going into this, and again, I'll say it, I think he's just thinking like, if I meet the right people and say the right things, then that will be enough. But in doing that, you're kind of siding with the establishment, you're siding with the elites, and you're losing touch with the people that you, ironically, you originally meant to help. Because like I said, we have Joey here, who you haven't highlighted at all, who's gone through a similar shit as you. And you should be the one to kind of elevate his story. And you have the means to do that now. Like, if you can call Crystal or whoever, or contact them and be like, I have something I want to share, you know, and you haven't done that. Like, he's making this about himself and just being like, and I wish actually you kind of pulled what Lucy kind of tweeted out. You know, our sister and fellow member of INN, you know, like Chris responded back and was like, what did he say? He was like,
he was,
I love you too. Like,
right. Well, she was pointing out stuff very similar to what we were pointing out, that this looks like you're getting co-opted. And I think she was a little like aggressive slightly, but like, I mean, I'll give her that, you know, but he essentially said like, I love you too. And, you know, just as because he thought it was a quick, you know, reply, not realizing that, you know, there was 8 people that would come in there saying the same thing under her, you know, and then some. So and why he decided to single out her and respond to her, I don't know, but you know,
but it got to him either way, which I think was kind of interesting, you know, that out of every tweet that was the one that he kind of responded to. But you know, but yeah, it's this work isn't glamorous, guys, you know, and it shouldn't be, because if you're doing this for the people, there's no money to be had if you're working for the people. You know, like you can look at industry, like for me as a teacher, you can argue I make decent money, but I'm not making like money of like a CEO. You know, so you know, helping people, there's no profit motive in that. It's really to ensure that people who are in your class get something to make their lives a little better. So,
Yeah.
I mean, he's gone, basically.
Yeah.
Like, we've said it for a while, but I think this just confirms the idea of like, yeah, like, I will almost say borderline too far gone.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm sure we're going to continue talking about him in the future, and we'll see, but like,
Yeah.
but meanwhile, there's people who are continuing to lose their jobs out of, his negligence at this point, which I think is very sad.
Yeah. And, I know he's been working with the Starbucks union too. I mean, he essentially has tried to make himself the figurehead for unions, similar to how Bernie's tried to do that and became the strike killer. They only show up when they need those things to not go well, as well as letting the entire thing get politicized, So, now it's a whole left-wing ideal now, because you're connected with Nina Turner, and you're connected with, the AFL-CIO, and you're connected with, like, you went to Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, and, like, you smiled and you took pictures and you talked to Congress and you called out a Republican.
And nothing has changed. He's
Nothing
met
changed.
with these people.
In fact,
met with the president, and nothing has changed.
In fact,
since
I have this from, Indy, who has joined us recently. How are you, my friend?
Hey, everybody. And I don't, and let me add also, how many Republicans has he been photographed with or tried to appeal to anyone on the Republican side? I mean, we begged him not to make this political, begged him repeatedly, messaged him, DM'd him, video, please, everything. Please don't. This needs to be nonpartisan. This needs to not be about politicians. And we need to embrace both sides and speak a message of workers and equality and wages, and focus on exactly what the needs of the people who are in those warehouses are concerned about, and nothing more. And that's not what's happening.
I just grabbed this headline from The Lever, and this was Cunningham and Sirota, of course, right? And they're allowed to see it to some degree, so like that
was literally the day that he was at the White House.
Yep. Yeah. And it's like Amazon gets huge contract despite Biden's union pledge. So, nothing changed.
I wonder if we can see if we can contact Joey, the Senate, and see if he's able to come on.
Sure. We've contacted other people in the union and have gotten nothing back. So,
Could be worth a shot.
Sure. Like,
I think at minimum just to highlight his story, because
yes. Yeah.
Because like I said, like it needs to be, and the fact that Chris has not done it, I think.
Yeah.
Is that the man from Cleveland?
Yes.
Yes.
He didn't he tweet about the Cleveland guy before, when he went out to see Nina Turner in the facility, like that day? I thought, or was it Franco that retweeted him about that?
I think Franco might.
I saw a tweet. I think it was his.
Franco tweeted out the story in regards to him, right? Where it was like, because he was essentially like doing time stuff at the time that story came out. So
wow,
I don't know, but I definitely wanted to highlight that little bit of ridiculous there before we got to why we have you here today, Indy. You've been doing a lovely bit of work along with the Dissonant, and Crab,
and you and Grab and Joe.
Yep. So I figured
Iron Brothers. Sisters.
Yep. And we'll play that video from Joe here in just a second, but I do have the article here. Where is it? There it is. And I have to make sure your name doesn't say Joe anymore. But says
I'm not Joe.
There you go. Look, I can fix it on the fly. Look at that.
Joe's badass. Shout out to Joe Nice for coming and doing INN News. Thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
Love
friend.
you, man.
Yeah, we need to have him back soon. He's by traveling the world, so it's hard to get a hold of. But Yeah, I'm glad he was able to kind of speak into, eugenics and just his, his mindset and touch point on a lot of stuff that I wasn't even thinking of. So
yeah,
glad to have him off at least for that segment.
This is a continuation of the breaking points, and their billionaire funding and shit. And specifically the story behind more of the realignment and that kind of stuff. But the last article, which if you haven't read, talked more about like the realignment and the intercept and Matt Stoller, right? And specifically Saga, right? So, and this one went into more of that, right? And Pierre
We're the same. I mean, again, just reminding people about the Hudson Institute again and Marshall, and that they work for them. And I learned a little something that Marshall actually works for the Lincoln Network, which it turns out they're the funders of the Lincoln Project, which I wasn't even aware of. But I believe Crab was the one that pointed me out to the fact that, that's Lincoln Project. Again, this was a video cut up by STFU Shitlib Joe, member of the INN, and he does supreme editing. I don't know if we have sound.
We will.
Sound nice.
Yeah, I was just letting you, but yeah, this is FTFU Shitlib Joe, another member of INN, does great little videos. So we'll let him speak for himself here.
Hey guys, it's Crystal.
And Sagar, we have an amazing announcement for you. We are starting a brand new, totally independent show. Could not be more excited about it. We want to compete with CNN, Fox News, MSNBC. They've got endless resources, but we've got you.
Guys, if you haven't canceled your Breaking Points subscription to, I don't know what you're doing. Get on it. These people are literally like promoting economic warfare and real warfare with China. Should not be giving them your money.
That's something else that we're really proud of, is that the audience has really different views across the entire spectrum.
No one's actually holding these fucks accountable because they brainwashed their entire audience into thinking that we should be going to war with China.
Breaking Points is building a network with most of the same issues as corporate media, and he says got to give the viewers of Breaking Points what they want. So who is the viewers? This is a question they ask. If China were to invade Taiwan, would you support the United States coming to Taiwan's defense?
Yeah, that's a right-wing China.
57% said yes.
Now we are able to partner with all of these great people.
Shut the fuck up, Sagar.
So that's the main graphic for everybody together. Breaking Points asked the guy that's against forced to vote. What is happening over here with Breaking Points? Just weird, like, conflicts of interest of him pushing the Democratic Party, and he happened to be married to a Democrat. And then there was one video I was
Rome
watching,
dying on that
like,
is hilarious.
I know some Democrats, and I paused it, Nick. I paused it, Rome, and I was like, what do you mean you know so many Democrats? You're fucking a Democrat. Yeah. Breaking Points.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Sabrina, aka Sabby Sab, she
Savvy Sabs.
put the right comment up for
That should be a gift.
Sabby Sab.
for Marshall. Okay.
Go fuck yourself, you fucking egghead nerd. I don't give a fuck about your committee shit. Why don't you stop saying that stupid shit?
That's directed at Matt.
It's a tumultuous time.
Yeah,
It's a
Katie.
sad time. And it's a dangerous time. But there is not a reason to give up on the fact that every day, the harder we work and the more people that we expand and more, that we actually can change with the status quo. Change feels like it's not happening, and then it happens all at once.
Shut the fuck up, Sagar.
What does this say to you? Does this scream revolution? Does this scream this scream urgency?
We want to continue to upgrade this studio. We need to fix some of the lights.
Shut the fuck up,
Yeah, the
Sagar. Not
lights.
everything's propaganda. Sagar is just an anti-China hack who comes from the Hudson Institute, which is one of the most anti-China conservative think tanks on the planet.
So look, guys, if you can help us out, I know how hard you guys work. And I know how hard it is out there, inflation and all that.
Shut the fuck up, Sagar.
We need to fix some of the lights.
Shut the fuck up, Sagar.
If you're used to consuming mainstream news content, and you're not used to watching YouTube shows, and you see something that has, a more minimalist background or more casual vibe to it, then I think there is a natural instinct to be like, that's not serious, that's not real.
They have 80,000 people subscribed to them right now. Think of the minds that they are poisoning. Think about all the rage that people have built up inside of them that they are keeping down. They are wetting out people's fire.
And if you can really support us, become a founding member. It's a one-time payment of $1,500.
Shut the fuck up, Sagar.
So fuck Marshall, fuck Kyle, fuck all these people. These people are our opposition, and we need to treat them like so.
Shut the fuck up, Sagar.
Who are these people?
Yeah.
Look at the
who are those
microphone, by the
people?
way.
I know, right?
Look at the microphone in the breaking points and the INN. It's kind of funny. They're pretty similar.
Yeah.
Yeah, Joe, I love you, Joe. You're the best. I saw that. I was like, shut the fuck up, Soccer. Oh, that's so good. Yeah. Also, just so good. Compton J.
As I said, we should make that GIF. GIF.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Oh, we'll get someone on it.
Just that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what we're talking about here, and the gist of this, and I don't have to read this. You can go to indienewsnetwork.substack.com and read it. But what we're talking about here, first of all, is that they sell the show as independent and user funded only. But most of their wealth and most of their income is funded from either DC think tanks or billionaires or people connected to billionaires, including some of the affiliates like The Intercept, which is funded by Pierre Omidyar, or had been.
Yeah.
And he funds and destabilizes governments and funds independent, quote unquote, corporate media that is, anti-corporate or anti-establishment, but takes up the second lane so that actual independent media that calls out real corruption and real hegemony and real hypocrisy, those are the ones that end up squashed out and pushed out and demonetized and deplatformed and silenced. And again, all the airspace is gone for them. So what we're talking about, first of all, is obviously because they're paid by these institutes, some of their coverage, again, and not all of it, but you just notice that on some of their talking points, you're gonna hear some of these right-wing and again, it's not just right-wing, but it's militaristic. It's pushing the establishment narrative. It's pushing the military narrative. It's pushing the more money for military. And I don't use defense because it's far from defending us at this point with 800 bases worldwide.
Yeah.
So when you're pushing for that and you're not offering alternate solutions, okay? So go ahead, Reef. You talk about this.
Well, yeah, I was just wanted to mention, we we'll follow up from the last article. You discussed briefly Crystal scam of a pack, the People's House Project, right? Which we also have where we read through that last article on INN News. If you guys want to go back and watch us read through that. So, talked about the People's House Project, was funded directly through Reid Hoffman, right? A notorious Russiagator, anti-Trummer, and former member of a board of directors at PayPal. Where's Omidyar money's from too, isn't it? Like PayPal, or is it eBay, right?
Yeah, we get a little further. We get to that a little further down. But before we get to even that, let's look a little bit into Reid Hoffman and what's his deal besides PayPal. All right.
Right.
Since PayPal, but yes, Reid Hoffman had been funding. So what we found here is that he funded the People's Policy, the People's House Project. It wasn't just him; it was him and a couple of Chicago donors, and we're starting to look into who those Chicago donors are also, and what their deal was, why they were contributing, why Crystal made so much more than they gave out. But what's the deal with Reid Hoffman? I mean, he did make a ton of money from PayPal, but also from LinkedIn. He's a founder of LinkedIn.
Yeah. So
this guy, he's a multi-time billionaire who's built multiple businesses. He was a founding board member of PayPal. He has a savior complex in some way, shape, or form. And I read this article from 2012. It's a glowing, kind of gushing interview where they're talking about him, and he has to wake up and decide what he's not going to do today because he has so many things that he possibly could do. Does he want to save the world or savor the world? And that's the quote that I grabbed from there. And they said, well, he actually wants to save the world. And then there's another quote that says he imagined when he growing up playing the game of government with his friends that he would be running the CIA. Well, as it turns out, that he's actually been funding all the candidates on the Democratic side as well as the anti-Trumpers.
Right.
And just recently, Liz Cheney has become the flavor of the month. And as it turns out, last week, before she had even really become that flavor, I was like, wait a minute. When I looked at his donations for 2022, I already seen that he was donating to Cheney for Congress in the primary in February. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Red flags. And that's how we knew that this was being set up to make her a darling of the Democratic Party. All right. And they're going to try to run maybe some kind of unity ticket, and who knows or elevate her so that she becomes Speaker of the House. They get rid of Kevin McCarthy, the Tea Party guy. They think she's more palatable because they're just as war hawky as each other. Yeah. He's more obstructionist and more Christian conservative and more focused on certain social issues that the Democrats are. Again, he's focused on anti-abortion. And here's and I think that Liz Cheney may have a bit of again, she's still 92% of the time Liz Cheney voted with Trump. So she's, again, no friend to the Democrats, though they are trying to make it like she is. It's hilarious. It's the uniparty, really. It's, again, the internal war and struggle that's being artificially manufactured by the media, as well as by the quote unquote independent corporate media. I call them the IMSM or the mid-libs. They are now occupying space and calling themselves independent, which means, what does independent media really mean? Are they trying to, kind of skew what that perception really is? Well, people think, well, they're user funded, and we're going to talk about their funding and exactly what kind of revenue it looks like they're making based upon a back of the napkin math and their own words and their own, what they're saying themselves.
Right.
You know what? I kind of equivocate this to, like, it's almost not almost. It is the equivalent of now politicians saying, I'm only funding my campaign through grassroots. Or organizing, or just like taking small money donations, because they know they caught on to the fact that, like, if you mention that you take money from big corporate donors, that people know now that, like, oh, that's a bad thing. But, like, if you're taking from small money donations, like from people like regular folks, then generally it gives the veneer like, oh, there must be good because they only are taking money from regular folks. But like, as we know, like, the idea, while I think it may have been good in theory or initially, has been co-opted into more sinister means. And I think especially given, breaking points, and I think Rob has said this, like, CNN is dying, like all of these legacy news networks are essentially dying because they haven't gotten, they're not getting the views that they used to, especially like people are not watching TV in the same way now. People are like turning to like YouTube or going online to get their news. So they had to figure out a way, like, how can we get people to watch news, but have them not feel like, oh, like it's all corporate and like shady and like having an agenda or whatever else from corporations. Oh, I know, like, let's have breaking points. I'm using them as this example, but we'll say it's independent, meaning free from corporate influence. In the guise of, oh, they are more trustworthy, when it's still the same shit, just repackaged in a different way.
I agree. Yeah, go ahead, Reef.
Well, I was just saying you continue to kind of go into Omidyar and The Intercept and how they're connected here. Founder of The Intercept and
then you get to the PayPal mafia.
Mm-hmm. Well, Hoffman was EVP, which is executive vice president, right? So he was responsible for all external relationships of PayPal, right? So Omidyar and Hoffman are both members of a club known as the Mafia, the PayPal Mafia, which also includes, most famously, Musk and Peter Thiel. Members of this group are and have been highly influential in determining how media today is presented and consumed, how narratives are crafted and delivered, and as well as hiring the executives to craft them. So you go into Alan McLeod's reporting on some of this, right? And then
we got Alan McLeod, we got Alex Rubenstein. From Mint Press News, Whitney. We got some Whitney Webb in there too. Love us some Whitney Webb. Love you, Whitney. We'd love to see you on INN News one day talking about one of your stories. That would be an honor and a privilege.
You go into talking about Mark Ames on the leaked documents that show Omidyar funded the 14 2014 Maidan coup in Ukraine that I think Oliver Stone talked about as well, with like Ukraine burning or whatever, right? And then, you know, Rubenstein and Mid-Press,
Ukraine on fire.
Used his wealth to advance Washington's policy of regime change, and has partnered with CIA cutouts such as USAID and the NED, which fund independent media outlets like Bellingcat, which we know TYT is definitely a fan of.
Paul Masson. Paul Masson.
Paul Masson. Paul Mason jar. But you know, Blumenthal and Rubenstein wrote, behind the image he has cultivated himself as a progressive philanthropreneur, Omidyar has wielded his media empire to advance the Washington consensus in strategic hotspots around the globe. His fortune helped found an outlet to propel a destabilizing coup in Ukraine. He's helped establish a network of oppositional youth activists and bloggers in Zimbabwe, and in the Philippines, he has invested in an oppositional news site that is honing corporate surveillance techniques like a mood meter to capture non-rational reactions. Meanwhile, he has partnered closely with the leading arms of U.S. soft power from the U.S. Agency for International Aid and Development and the National Endowment for Democracy, acting as a conduit for information warfare-style projects in countries around the world. So, yeah, I mean, and like how exactly, I mean, I know Omidyar's with the Intercept, right? Which Breaking Point said was also joining them, right? So, thoughts so far, Collin?
I mean, this is nothing new that I, haven't heard from Indy, previously, but
every day.
Yeah,
basically. But, again, it's just the idea, it just kind of goes along with what I was saying. It's just like they're just trying to repackage news in a way that doesn't make them suspect to people thinking, oh, this is another corporate-led news site. So it's still the same players. It's just repackaged differently with the guys of, like Sagar and Crystal, who are seen more trustworthy, quote unquote, because they say, oh, we don't take corporate money, and they take our money, in the guise of like, hey, we're supported by you, when we don't ever hear of who's behind the scenes at all, which is on purpose.
Yeah.
So, especially given the kind of connections that Sagar and Crystal both have, it's, and I get why people might not necessarily think of it in this way, because, we see what we see from them. And they come off as believable, like, we only take on the news in this way, but that's a front just in terms of like the real people behind the scenes who are just essentially like crafting the facade that these personalities are making, that they show to us. So yeah, it's not surprising, but yeah, it just makes it more nefarious of what they're doing.
Yeah, so we really only had like, I think there's out of all the people in this group, there's only one of them that had publicly available contact information, right? That like actually answers their stuff. So here, this is when did they put this out again, Indy? May 30th, right? This is from the @Points community Twitter, right? And this is after they had done the show on their anniversary, right? And they write, partners of the show elevate Breaking Points to another level from the contributors of Maximilian Alvarez at The Real News, at Ryan Grimm, and others at The Intercept, on-the-ground reporting from Jordan Cheriton at Status Poo, and the thoughtful commentaries by Matthew Stoller and at James Lee. So, and they include all of these logos, and, like, they definitely made it seem as if this was a network they were forming. Right. So, Indy, we definitely, we reached out, to Max. Which one? Is this the old one? Yes. Why did I scroll all the way up to the top? So
you're way past it now.
Yep. I got it. So yeah, since they announced their intent to expand their affiliates during their May 30th anniversary show, some interesting things can happen. You can read Max's full statement about it below, which I will do, but basically he's getting paid as a freelancer on a per video segment produced to cover a topic that Crystal and Sagar don't have expertise in: labor. It was certainly presented as more of a relationship, as you see in this tweet, which, you know, and here's that same tweet, right? So we reached out to Max directly for a statement on his affiliation with Breaking Points, and here it is. My statement is basically an extension of this tweet, which he made on June 1st. Apparently, I need to address a rumor. No, At The Real News has not merged with At Points Community. We remain an independent nonprofit network, and all of our stuff is exclusively posted on our channels. I produce a bi-weekly labor video for BP and get paid $300 as a freelancer. That's it. Right. So he replies to me, I think it's perfectly reasonable for folks to have questions about this, and I've been nothing but open with all who ask me about it. I was approached by BP in April and asked if I would be interested in hosting a labor-focused segment every 2 to 3 weeks that would air on the BP YouTube channel. I would basically be a freelance correspondent and get paid $300 per video. If a video went viral and could be monetized, I would get a small percentage of that on top of the $300. But with worker and labor-focused videos, that hardly ever happens. That really is the extent of the partnership. I write all the scripts after work hours, and none of the Real News Network's resources go into producing the BP segments. TRNN is and will remain an independent, viewer-supported, nonprofit news network. BP does not get to publish any of our video, audio, text content. We don't get to publish any of theirs. They get no like logos, I would imagine. They get no money from us. We get none from them. The payment for each segment goes to me as the freelancer. I was agreed that I would be able to highlight clips from TRNN reports, or it was agreed, with a company TRNN branding in my segments if I so wished. But those clips would be integrated into a segment independently produced and published by the BP team. I said yes because of an opportunity to highlight the reporting we do at The Real News and to help the worker stories we spend so much time and effort on reach a broader audience. For all the time, effort, and resources we pour into our labor coverage every week at TRNN, getting people to watch, listen, to read, and support that reporting is a never-ending struggle, and we, specifically me, are not serving the workers who entrust us with their stories if we are not doing everything we can to make sure people actually see them. Before making any decisions, I consulted with the TRNN staff, and we came to a democratic consensus that me doing this segment for BP under the terms of this agreement was worthwhile and would not compromise TRNN's independence or editorial mission. So far, Max has produced 3 segments of The Art of Class War for the BP channel, and he lists those segments. So hope that clarifies things. Thanks a bunch, Max. We find it interesting that TRNN and Max and possibly others were unaware they were going to be mentioned in this way on this stream. So, but yeah, and you showcase Franco, who let you come talk about the first article, right? And recently brought you on to discuss this article, and Sabby covering, bringing you on as well, I think, right? This is me and you covering it on How Did We Miss That. Franco went on with, or Mad Crab. Were you there with him, or was it just you? Or was it just Crab that went on Political Matrix?
It was originally just Crab, and then I popped in.
Gotcha.
As well, and again, we went through the first one, and now we're just starting to go through the second one, and we've got a third one that asks a bunch of additional questions, and again looks into some of the funding and what the monthly looks like, and what their annual or lifetime subscription funding looked like, and how much they've made off of that so far, and also taking a deep dive into one of their affiliate partners, that whatever you want to call them, it's not necessarily a network, but the freelancers that they've hired, to look at why have they hired them, what is the deal with these folks, and how does it link, where's the connection, what are they all getting out of this other than maybe a lift because Breaking Points has been a growing channel. And I got to even start to ask questions about that growth, and how much of that is due to algorithmic kind of pushing, where they're in the suggested the suggested things, when you're auto playing, breaking points will come up next. Just about every day in my YouTube suggestions, it's suggesting me to watch different segments. And I'm sure that some people will see the titles and they know how to make enticing titles and say, oh, yeah, that's pretty cool. I'll take a look at that. And that picks up some views. But I mean, look, if you scroll up to that tweet again on Saga, on Saga's tweet, if you look at the Breaking Points community, which as an unofficial channel on YouTube or on Twitter, I understand they're not going to have the same amount.
On which article?
Points community.
Yes,
the one from Points community is on both articles.
Yeah.
The one from Saga is in the first article. Correct. That look at how many likes and retweets there are on that.
Yeah.
This is for a show that has
2 retweets.
800,000 followers on YouTube. I can't stress this enough. 800,000 followers on YouTube, yet they only have 12,500 fans on Twitter. Now, what's really weird, again, and I'm sure, I'm not sure. I need to go back and I need to watch their content and see if they've talked about a strategy or the reason for not being engaged on Twitter or Facebook or any other social media.
Those 12,000 followers gave you 37 likes, and you have very low engagement in that case. Right?
When did they start?
Yes.
When did they create this page?
That's interesting. November of 2020, which means it might have been a Crystal and Saga Hill Rising fan page, because they didn't even break off to do Crystal and Saga until June of 2021 was the first episode.
This is an unofficial account.
That's right.
So they don't have an official one.
They don't even have an official Rising. They don't even have an official account for Crystal for Crystal Kyle and Friends. I think Crystal Kyle and Friends may have one.
Yeah,
I'm not even sure. This show certainly is not. They basically just have their own individual Twitter accounts.
Right.
Again, it says unofficial account with Saga and Crystal.
Right.
And I just think that it was the Hill before that.
Yeah, so I have a couple of things I want to say. I think it's just merely, since I'm thinking of it right now, I think it's very weird that you would think this is a big deal, that they wouldn't want to promote their I want to say network,
their channel, their videos, their everything,
but in one spot on Twitter, especially given the base that they have allegedly. Number one. So I do think it's kind of strange, and I have thought it strange that they don't have their own official account. Number one. Number two, and actually this is something I wanted to ask you, Indy, getting, maybe Reef, you know this too, getting $300 per video. Is that typical as a freelancer?
I mean, it depends on it depends on individual. We theorize that probably Cheriton's getting that too, and James Lee probably as well for segments that they help BP produce.
I mean,
Stoller likely as well.
Yeah,
it just seems just like me, but that seems cheap to me.
I think so too.
I totally agree with you there, and that's something that you're teasing. You're burying the lead. Come on, that's in the next one.
Great minds think alike.
We're certainly we're certainly wondering that in a show that's making a few.
Yeah, I'm only saying that given being in this space and working with you guys, I think especially for INN, for the last few months, the work that I think, and we don't even do to the degree that I'm sure Max has to do in editing and creating thumbnails and reporting and gathering interviews and putting them together, and that's a lot of work for $300. To sit at a computer and edit for several hours just to get a 3-minute clip takes a long time, so it just seems very cheap to me that they only get $300 plus monetization from their channel, which is not going to be very much really relatively. So Yeah, that just sounds equivalent of like what a bartender might make, like with a base salary plus tips.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was just my only comment. Like it just seems cheap to me.
No, not arguing with that. I do think that they are considering what the show is making on a monthly basis. If they're going to have somebody doing a recurring spot, if you're going to pay them at all. Now, we have a question about whether they should be even paying them to do any spots and do that kind of reporting. I mean, look, we don't get paid by anybody other than our users ourselves. These guys all have their own independent channels. They all have Patreons. They all have Substacks. They all have funding. Everybody's got funding here. I mean, save for a couple of them. And
Stabby Sabs paid me $20 to do a stream for her one time, and I felt bad even asking for that. So, like, you know, 300 a pop. I definitely think I would bankrupt all of RBN if I was trying to ask that. You know,
Right.
So I mean, but for something like Breaking Points, it should be fairly easy when they're still monetized to some degree. Like,
again, I'm not saying that they should be working for free or they should be doing this completely for zero money at all. Okay. Yeah. I'm saying that if they're going to be making what they're making, that they should definitely share the wealth. I think that they are telling these folks that, look, you're going to be getting a bump off a channel that's growing, that is either way, way larger than yours, multiple times the size, or that is growing when your channel's growth has been stagnant for X amount of time, or giving visibility to your writing where on a show that's growing and that's getting close to, you know, that's over 800,000 subscribers on YouTube alone. And again, what's funny and what's fishy is, where are they on Rockfin? Are they on Rumble? Are they on Twitter? Are they on Twitch? They're on YouTube. They're on one platform,
monetized,
and they're a
on YouTube.
podcast. They're,
right.
Well, they're not just monetized, but what I think one of my theories is they are trying to go to become, but YouTube partnership, the YouTube partnership that Kyle had with TYT is the reason why his channel was growing.
Right. Yeah.
Once he left that partnership, his channel stopped. So what he wants to do is figure out a way to get Breaking Points and their network of partners a YouTube partnership, so that his channel and all the other channels that are part of that network start growing to the level that a TYT does. But you got to play ball with YouTube. You got to play ball with the algorithm. You got to play ball with corporate media. You got to play ball with advertisers. We're not willing to do any of that, which is why we look for alternate platforms. These guys have decided not to.
But I think even with that, like, and just thinking about, you know, like Max Alvarez and his channel, like his network, like the fact, like their content is not going to be heavily highlighted at all.
No.
Like, so to me, like Crystal and Saga talk about basically like more or less mainstream within the independent, you know, circles generally. You know, they're not going to be talking about like labor and activism all that much.
No.
So like that's a feature that is only going to be featured once a month, if that. So to me, the idea of like them paying that much, that little for something that really, honestly, if they were really like independent and really wanting to push for more direct action / mutual aid causes or activism, like that should be, to me, highlighted a lot more if they wanted to be truly independent.
Right.
But it's still within the reins of corporate. You know, we will talk about mainstream stories within the independent sector, that media sector that you know, like people want to know about, and we'll kind of go into like a lot of these more niche topics, but not a whole lot, because we got to obey basically the overlords that is. So, you know, So if anything, I'm kind of confused in a sense, more so now than ever was. Like, why would they still be willing? I get it. Like, it's a way to kind of highlight more stuff that I think elevates their work and elevates the issues. But if they're not even going to be a major focus, to me, why bother?
Yeah.
They're almost kind of better off doing stuff like with us, and we would feature them all the time.
Or RBN.
Because that's what we're looking
yeah.
more to do. Breaking Points is not looking for people to be like fully into direct action or doing anything.
They want people to fill the gaps as an excuse. It's like, yo, look, we have James Lee here and he talks about this and that and this.
Right.
You know,
it's
or look, we have Jordan here and he gets out in the street.
Like the feel good segment of the week or / month.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's all it is to me. That's what it gives.
And it's not even the feel good segment. It's the poverty porn, or it's the we're all going to die, or it's the here's what the crazy lefties are talking about these days type of thing. Right. And that's what they're going to end up framing it, at least behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, maybe not necessarily on air, but the way it's presented and the manner in which it's framed and the amount of stories that are corporate funded that it's framed against tell you how they feel about it in the same way.
At the same time, up against Sagar and Marshall, and I'm sure they'll have more of like their right-wing friends like to be affiliates and things like that, like as time moves on, So I don't know.
Is it going to be the Daily Wire?
Porn, they got Jordan for that. No offense.
Well, that's exactly right.
I mean, all the offense in the world, but so to me, it's just like unnecessary that they even are a part of it.
Well, I think if you do pin yourself as an independent and you pride yourself on that, you might avoid these people, because it might affect how people view your like reporting in the future. And we run into this frequently ourselves. If we go on a show that's not like people don't think is credible, we then become less credible. So I don't know, but anyway, anything to close out?
Let's see. We didn't really talk about the link between the PayPal mafia and exactly what they're doing and how far back they go. So they go back to 2019 to 1998 PayPal. Then they were kind of affiliated and aligned, and Reid Hoffman is working LinkedIn, and they're all funding the technology sector and figuring out what how to get into people's brains and how to kind of and look. Ukraine narrative is all over the propaganda is all over LinkedIn today, and Reid Hoffman's he's a chairman, or he's just kind of not even affiliated at this point, but the sentiment in corporate America and all of it permeates, but the way that they're connected is this PayPal mafia is, again, you've got Musk that owns Twitter, you've got Peter Thiel that owns Rumble, you've got Omidyar that owns The Intercept, okay, you've got Reid Hoffman that's involved in the Lincoln Project, all of this and then I learned about this guy David Sachs recently, and we're going to get into David Sachs soon, but David Sachs is a PayPal mafia member, and he's the founder and funder behind Collin. He's also not exactly a good dude. Then he's somebody we need to keep our eye on. He just funded a successful recall against the San Francisco DA Chessie Boudin, who I know wasn't exactly the most lefty guy, but he was one of the more lefty guys that we had. I know up there, and he was trying to not criminalize homelessness, and he was trying to not criminalize petty crimes and shoplifting. And they, the Republicans and the right-wing Democrats that run San Francisco it's out of control. And of course, they had the corporate media screaming and driving fear, fear-mongering about small petty crime shoplifting when their representative has, a husband who's got the second DUI at age 82 and made a ton of money on a bunch of stock transactions and options trading and all kinds of stuff. And nobody ever asked a question on that, which I just find kind of interesting. But the shoplifting, that's out of control. Why they have to see that? Poop on the street is a problem. Well, get them some public bathrooms, man. And how about let's get them some housing? Let's get people some housing. The problem is the fact that corporations, BlackRock, Vanguard, are buying up all of the property and then charging exorbitant rents because Silicon Valley salaries are out of control, and they've priced everybody else out of the market, out of their own houses, and out of the city. They don't know where to go.
Yeah. Oh, terrible.
There you go. Oh, that's a good one. Where's the PayPal Mafia now?
Yeah, I
was even a few years ago.
I was scrolling through this this article while you were doing stuff, but you know,
we've got a bunch of links in there. Again, it's well referenced and sourced. This one, I don't remember what the name of that one is. I found that, and it was just a pretty good in-depth, high-level, not even really in-depth, but a high-level dive into each one of these guys and some of the businesses that they founded, what they were involved with. I think it was even from a few years ago. This wasn't even exactly the most recent article about them, but you're not going to find much about them because what they've been doing is using their entities to hire the people and try to scrub this stuff as much as possible, make it disappear. They're hoping it disappears into the ether, and we have to try to keep it active and keep it alive, and keep showcasing these people's connections. And are they meeting at Bilderberg? Oh, we didn't even talk about Build-A-Bear. Okay, that Reid Hoffman and Pierre Omidyar and Peter Thiel and David Sachs. I think I don't want to speculate. I don't know for I haven't had David Sachs confirmed. I had the other three confirmed. We're at that Bilderberg meeting in DC at the Mandarin Hotel a week ago Monday.
Yeah. Which is another crazy stuff. I mean, they talked about like, you know, how are we gonna still have Russia give us money? Like there were some interesting things brought up there, right? But anyway, appreciate you coming on to talk about this. That was nice of you.
Thanks, Indy.
Yeah, and appreciate Joe Nice for showing up. He was killer.
Thank you, Joe.
Appreciate Collin coming on as he normally does. INN will continue doing these on Wednesday, so please tune in. I'm trying to remember if there's anything. There's going to be tomorrow Extra Bulla, probably. I imagine.
That's going to be on Warren's channel. I think he's doing that on his channel first, exclusively on Extra Bulla. Now that he's got his own Rockman channel, he's going to start doing that, and then he's going to probably stream it up to the INN Friday. I'm hoping to get that up on the INN Rockfin as well. Definitely the other INN channels. Look for that. You're going to do a Reefer After Dark Friday night?
Maybe. I just got to find some guests that are willing to, hang out with me for an hour for no reason. So, we'll figure that out.
It's more like 2, but
I probably should. I probably should do one since I haven't done one in a couple of weeks. Just to make sure I'm still doing those.
How did we miss that Sunday night? And I did a show with Rob earlier today that everybody should check out. It was called INN One-on-One. I premiered it. We talked about platforms and the challenges of streaming, a little bit about networks and collaboration and all the different things that you have to do and that you can do in order to make your channel successful. And how do you focus? Where do you focus? What do you upload? Do you live stream? So many different questions to ask. I had such a blast talking with Rob. He and I had never sat down one-on-one before, amazingly enough. So everybody be sure, give that a watch. Ad-free, rockfin.com/INN. That's an INN exclusive show, just like American Tradition with Jesse Jett. INN exclusive shows, as well as INN News that you're watching right now. INN exclusive show. You're not going to find this on any other network, any other channel except for INN. That's again, rockfin.com/INN. YouTube.com/Indie News Network. Our channels are growing. Thank you so much to the 100 people who have already followed our new Rockfin channel in 1 week. That is incredible. And we're so grateful to everybody for doing that. We're getting close to 500. I think we're at 490 on our YouTube channel. Again, barely advertised. And that's in 6 months, 7 months. So again, thank you so much to everybody for supporting that, and share the stream, share the channels, support, follow Collin, follow Reef, follow Indy, of course, and everybody in this network.
In the description below, there's a link tree for Indie News Network. You can click the Meet the Members tab. and there should be links to direct ways to, like support each one of our members. So please go through there and give each one a follow and a sub. And, if you can, I know people are like super tight right now. I'm not going to say we need to fix any lights because we don't.
We don't.
But,
well, we don't have lights to fix.
Right. Exactly. But,
as far as the studio,
people still got to eat. So, we would like to put some like dinner on the table. That would be appreciative. But, other than that, I think that's everything. Collin, you got anything coming up?
Actually, I do. So I'm going to be on. So Sabby and JB from the RBN Network premiered their new show that they do together last week. I'm going to be on their show tomorrow night with,
nice,
I think, tentatively Glory Jones, who is connected with Mikasa Sukasa Network. If I remember correctly, we're going to be talking about colorism in media. So that should be a very interesting conversation with them. So I'll be on their channel tomorrow night at 6 Eastern Standard Time.
Tomorrow at 4, I'll be on Misty's as well, which you can listen to on TNT Radio at 4 Eastern. So that should be a
and
good
I'll be
time.
doing Friday at 3 on Misty too. That's right. I forgot about that. Thank you for reminding me.
Yes, sir. Colin, anything else?
So something happened with Action.
Go ahead. Colin, anything else before? Sounded like you were still going.
Other than INN news, once I'm on break, which will be in the next couple of weeks, I want to try and get my own channel. Like, I've had an episode that has been sitting, waiting to be edited. So that'll definitely be my job in July to get that out, and then try and get a couple of interviews from my channel, Kamal Mukwano. So hopefully over the summer I want to get at least a couple of episodes up. So once I finish school, then I'll have the time to do that.
Cool. You're welcome to just throw those kids out a little early if you want,
I think technically they would have been out by now, really, but District had different plans, so we got
anyway,
1 more week to go.
Indy was talking about Action for Assange, which probably happened a minute ago, I imagine, right? Wasn't it tonight?
While you were on stream, I went to look at A for A and to go watch and show some support. And actually, first when I tried to play it on YouTube, it blocked it. On Twitter, because it said it was adult content. It was blocking it from YouTube from previewing. But even when I clicked it to watch it on YouTube, there was yet another warning that I had to click a button and acknowledge. Yes, I know that there may be danger or topics talked about that are questionable or whatever. And I screen capped it and I tweeted it, and you can check out my Twitter at IND Left News. You can find it, and you can. I'm going to pin the tweet now so everybody can find it. And it's unbelievable what's going on. They literally made us click through 2 different gates just to be able to see the video that I wanted to watch. I'm going to pin it right now, and you got it. So now if you go to my Twitter, you can see that tweet is pinned with a screen cap of what I saw on my YouTube, which is, again, I've never seen anything like that. Misty hadn't either. It's like, wow.
Yeah.
All right, everybody.
We've seen it on my stuff specifically, I think, because it's, gets deemed adult content, and, I don't show any fun stuff. So, I don't know how that happened. But anyway, I think that's it for tonight. Wanted to thank everyone for showing up. Appreciate all the new names in the chat, and all the old ones. But, as always, I say to you, labels are bad. Please stay independent.
Stay independent.
Good night. Have a good week.
Night.